Hey guys. This is part 9 of What If Naruto Could Talk to the Nine Tails from the start and was corrupted. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 64, Rave Off. The fire the Leaf Ninja thought Onsen City free of was being replaced before them. For a brief moment, it seemed like the conflict was over. Such hope was revealed as only that when another enemy appeared. None knew what to do. He was beyond even their teachers, who both teams combined still couldn't take. Death reared its head once again. Kakuzu, thinking the major threats incapacitated, emerged from the ground. His mass creations rejoined his body, threads sticking out and writhing over his form as a living shroud. Catching sight of his mostly intact arm, he sent threads from his stump to retrieve it. Lightning ran through him and explosion tags ate some of his threads just when he reattached the limb. He twitched and glared up at the three young shinobi. Nothing! Sasuke's eyes widened at the masks by his head opening. Damn it! He grabbed Dosu by the shoulder and led him in running up the palace wall alongside Tenten. Wind and fire again swirled into a blazing inferno. None could outrun the flames in time, and jumping off would have left them open in the air. Before they could be burned to a crisp, the space between them distorted. The fire swirled into a void that remained until the mask stopped spewing. Kakuzu put together what happened in an instant. Barely keeping himself up by a hand on the parapet, Kakashi's Sharingan I-8. He could have killed Kakuzu while he was preoccupied, but he couldn't allow his students to die. The man fell back under before he could use his Mangekyo on him. It was exactly as he suspected, albeit still frustrating. Sasuke made out the floating blobs of chakra in the clouded sky with his Sharingan. Bubbles? You didn't see them wash the fire out? Tenten asked. Where are the bubbles when you need them? Dosu stopped, noticing the heat and light were gone. What the? Utakata noticed the same thing. The corrosive properties of his bubbles would have eaten away at Kakuzu's body, but what he could sense as fire chakra enhanced by wind chakra would have incinerated them before they could, protecting and alerting him of his presence. He was neither against nor for the unknown shinobi dying, though it was good for him they didn't. While he was curious of the uniquely rotten chakra fleeing from the palace, his focus could not shift from the greater threat. An element of surprise and an opening was what he needed. Grumbling, Kakuzu had all three remaining masks leave his body with their own threads. Kakashi needed to die by any means necessary, even if it might cost him his bounty. The strange threaded beings scanned their surroundings, ignoring explosive tags detonating by them, as before, and picked his head sticking out over the bulwark. Each soared to his position, stopped overhead in different positions so he couldn't escape, and opened their mouths. Sasuke, Chidori already in his hand, stared. His sensei was about to actually die. Once again, he was too weak to protect and stop anyone. The expanse between him and them was just as it was for Naruto and Itachi. Blood oozed from his left eye as it erupted in pain. That exact instant, Sasuke was in the air right by the deformed mask. He drove his lightning fist through it without a thought, shaped the lightning into a blade, and swept through towards the others. Both survivors scattered while turning their attention to him. Each already channeled their chakra type into their mouths. Only the wind connected, the fire mask being launched away by a fierce green kick, and made a crater in the wall walkway with his body. Lee used the pushback of his flying kick to swipe through the wind mask with Sakura's blade. The material covering the bare metal of the grip was almost completely ash, leaving only flesh-burning steel behind. Not saving a comrade would hurt more. He would have thrown it where the other landed before it dug between corpses back into the earth if not for the metal being fused to his hands. Thanks. Sasuke managed out as he landed. Your movement was... Lee drifted off at the sight of his star-flower-like eye. Is that? He knew it couldn't be anything else. The Mangekyo. Groaning, he tried to look toward his sensei, recalling their conversation about the Sharingan developing. Did he know? Kakuzu shook in anger when reunited with his remaining heart, its chakra relaying what happened. He clearly had his enemies outmatched, but they had tricks up their sleeves that even all his experience couldn't account for. There was nothing more infuriating. It reminded him of the worst moment in his life. For all his power and skill, Hashirama was a sage. Can you stand? Lee asked, ripping a hand away from the burning hilt. Sasuke eyed the blood spurting from his palm and shook his head. Who's with the daimyo? He didn't have to see to know the previous one's widow was glaring at his comrade. Guy-sensei. He looked out to the distant figures of his teacher placing a burned, albeit firm, hand on the frozen lord's shoulder. Though he is in need of immediate medical aid. He's Ollie. A cold hand gripped the back of his neck and would have crushed his spine in a second if he hadn't used his mangekyo to move himself several dozen feet up. Lee, hearing their enemy growl and seeing his comrade gone, rushed over and slashed down into the wall with both hands, splitting his one. What have you done with Sakura? Kakuzu scoffed at the outrage on his face. Pathetic. His other hand, extended by threads, emerged from another side of the wall and grabbed the burning grip of the blade. She's worth a lot of money, like that Uchiha, but unlike you. People cannot be measured in wealth. He struggled to keep the sword in his hold. Then why does that regal puppet live while so many peasants lay dead? Lee faltered for a moment, unintentionally giving his enemy the opening he needed to wrest it away. He leaned out of a hasty swing and saw Sasuke still falling from above. With a single jump, he caught him before he could gather more velocity. They landed not far off from the daimyo's position, but only Lee could move, so he set him down. Kakashi did not take his Sharingan off Kakuzu's chakra. Instead of going for him, he retreated deeper into the wall and back to the earth, knowing he'd see him coming or have moved his position. While they didn't have him on the ropes, they were putting up far more of a fight than he anticipated. The masked beings were clearly part of him, but their chakra, despite being similar, carried a different signature when not latched to his body. It disturbed and interested him just how he attained that state, recalling Hashirama's record of the fight with a seemingly ordinary yet powerful waterfall shinobi. I've never felt so useless. Dosu lamented, watching from the palace wall. Tenten sighed. You get used to it. At the very least, she disabled his use of conventional jutsu for a time. Oh crap. Her eyes drifted down to the flames emerging from the palace entrance. Kiba. Restitched hands in the snake seal, Kakuzu channeled his chakra into the structures he knew they were, and nearly everywhere else they could go. There was a chance he'd ruin whatever profit he could turn from the Sharingan users, but they angered him. He managed to at least secure one major source of wealth. It was something he could live with, although losing the other surviving Uchiha would haunt him after he calmed down. Oh no. Kakashi's eyes widened at the rapidly spreading chakra. Everyone jump! He dove and grabbed Hitomi, sinking into the palace wall with her. Those that could hear, having avoided two giant large-scale elemental jutsu, knew what was about to happen. Lee picked up Sasuke again, Guy grabbed Minoru, and Tenten reluctantly embraced Dosu from behind. All leapt. In the fraction of a second, the material where they were erupted into long, thick spikes. Every inch of grounded space near them was spikes, from the side of the palace wall Tenten and Dosu were to the surrounding field of corpses. A chill ran down Tenten's spine at the cold tip of one grazing her back. She looked down at the spikes awaiting them and gulped. There was nothing in her scrolls that could absorb the fall, and she had no ninjutsu. While they could try grabbing the sides of the spikes, the force of their bodies would likely slam into the surrounding ones. Ninjutsu, even if she could use any, didn't typically account for lethal heights either. What th? Dosu's eyes widened at their scenery. Shit! His hands began forming signs. Whatever you do, don't let go of me. Huh! Tenten's face scrunched when he tilted them towards the ground. Finishing the seals, he took a deep breath and blew a powerful wind with the great breakthrough jutsu. They rose from the sheer force crashing into the earth and crushing the spikes. He concentrated on gradually lessening its strength, steadily bringing them down. Both sighed in relief when their feet touched the blunted dirt. Lee was not in the least worried. As soon as the spikes were in his range, he flipped and swept his heel through their sides. He landed the second after. Guy was giving him a red thumbs up not far away the moment he turned his head to check, having done the exact same maneuver. Kakuzu rose from the earth, Sakura's sword in one hand, and twitched at the sight of the two still standing shinobi. You are the most irritating pests I have ever come across. Dosu couldn't hear him but figured he was saying something on account of not engaging them. Fuck you! He spat. His sword arm extended from the elbow. Then he burned. From his head to his toes, he was covered in corrosive droplets. Smoke from the earlier fire and the darkness of night hid them from his sight. Anger and greed drove his mind away from who he was originally after. Another pop resounded for those that could hear, revealing Utakata floating in a bubble. He looked down at the melting man fleeing into the ground once more. No. Odd slime emerged from his skin. This is where you die. Other bubbles expanded from his one, forming the shape of an irregular slug's head. Its mouth opened and a mass of glowing purple bubbles grew inside. When it was just the right size to annihilate only his enemy, it spat. Fright bubbles! Tenten stared straight into the majestic explosion. Maybe I could seal and use jutsu like that. I was not ready for today. Dosa laughed. Kakuzu, rearranging the placement of his organs to avoid crippling and death, darted through the earth, aiming to displace the acid with other material, before being caught in the blast. He was already more of a bundle of threads than a human when it consumed a good portion of him. The corpse-like skin he had was eaten away by the acid. As quick as he reacted, he could not salvage one of his eyes and the other was nearly blind. What was left of him kept going to escape, seething all the way. Yudakata scowled at what he sensed as his survival. He knew he wasn't normal, but the vast majority of shinobi would be dead, nearing death, or at the very least unconscious. It likely wouldn't be the last time he saw him. As much as that concerned him, he was relieved it was over for the time being. A yawn and a sigh blended into one while he descended. You're a Jinchuriki, aren't you? Despite not being a sensor ninja, she could feel his chakra in that moment, just like in the Chunin exams arena. Why are you here? Tenten watched his bubble pop, eroding the spiked ground he'd land on to a relatively flat surface in a second. Do you know where the living quarters in the palace are? She blinked. Huh! Her eyes widened. Wait, Sakura! She looked to the area she was abducted. Oh, she's fine. Directions to the living quarters, please. There's another phi. She stared at him blowing into the pipe in his hand, conjuring a bubble dragon. Dosa groaned. Damn it, scroll girl. You! Tenten shook her head as the dragon rammed into the entrance they got out of. Deaf idiot! Yudakata sighed before leaping over to their safe area. I'll find it myself. He jumped once more into the palace. What? Dosa asked, face scrunched in confusion. Kakashi emerged with the dowager lady with a similar look when he saw them standing around with their enemy nowhere in sight. Guy and Lee jumped to the other two and set their damsels down before retrieving them. On the opposite side of the palace, the surviving guards were led out by Kiba and Akamaru away from the growing fire they didn't know was extinguished. Yudakata found the guards' quarters, walked to a bed, and dropped unconscious onto it. The night of horrors finally ended for what was left of Onsen City. Nothing went right or as planned for any faction in Orochimaru's headquarters. Each was thrashed by a different one but weren't defeated yet. As powerful as the Akatsuki were, the team couldn't fully account for the unique abilities of their enemies. Orochimaru's servants and the root agents, whether intentionally or not, attacked in tandem. The girl that spiraled after their main combatant could drain his chakra and sever its stream. Sasori reached for the sealing scroll on his back and stopped, realizing his collection of puppets could easily be cut off from him. Deidara! He swept his rent body away on iron sand into the halls as if it were a wave. We're leaving. Then I'm gonna be ill. He nearly bit his tongue when he was swept along with him. Hinata's lion fists dissipated. His chakra doesn't look like he's retreating. Groaning, Suigetsu liquefied onto his feet. Where? He squinted at the space where his enemy was. The hell did that ginger bitch go? Your girlfriend is still hiding underground. Anko quipped. Fuck you. He turned to his twitching and heaving comrade. What happened? Kabuto stood. We need to join her right now. Anko stopped him before he could step forward. Not until we get what we want. Grinning, she streamed lightning chakra through him. Karen, blushing, emerged from the floor and pointed accusingly. What is wrong with you? Huh? Suigetsu's face scrunched at the look on hers. Do you want to go? Anko asked, knowing she could sense the stirring in her chakra. I don't do gentle. She giggled at her face turning red. He nearly stepped back. Whoa! We're going to die, you idiots! Kabuto yelled. They're nearly outside, Hinata said. The only thing they can do is fill this place with explosives. Sinking out of the torture enthusiast's grasp, he nearly sighed. Exactly. Oh no! Karen shot her chains around her remaining allies, tugged them toward her, and sunk beneath the ground with them. Anko grabbed Hinata and did the same. Sai was already down with Torian when the words left Kabuto's lips. They all sunk as deep as they could just to be safe. It was the wisest course of action, even though it distanced both from their objectives. Back in the forest, Sasori lifted the remains of himself and Deidara back on to their clay dragon ride. It took off with a simple gesture from its creator. They looked down at the distant hideout before sharing a look. Nothing needed to be said. Deidara reached into his clay pouch, chewed it into an odd sculpture with his mouth hands, took the explosive out, dropped it, and watched his creation expand. The blast towered over everything else. Whatever life dwelled in the immediate vicinity was obliterated. Its force was so great the trees near the explosion but not caught in it fell over, and the shock wave only kept traveling. People far from where they were could see it illuminate the night. A crater would remain for dozens of lifetimes after. It was beautiful. All in Mori town heard an explosion. It was the closest settlement to the blast, so it was nearly impossible for them not to. Men rose, women awoke with gasps, and babies cried. The shinobi, on the other hand, mobilized while the ones already awake stared. Within the Uzumaki residence, the shinobi lord held his quivering maiden. "I need to check the area," Naruto said, stroking her head. "I won't go far." Rika nodded as best she could. All right." She held herself when free from his embrace. He ran out to the open center of his domicile, went up the pillar, and made out the black mushroom cloud in the distance. "What the hell?" "We must go," Orochimaru, standing some ways away, said. "I know you're not going to tell me anything, so I don't need to tell you to go fuck myself, yes." He stared out into the night sky and saw an inkling of what he was wary of. "Have you been practicing your wind style?" Naruto shot him a look. "You've seen me kill people with a flick of my fingers. Do you think you can redirect a falling object with the size and width of a tower? What are you talking about?" He squinted when he began to notice the approaching distant figure where the cloud was. Kuro flickered onto the roof in a kneeling position. "Lord Holy Roy." He held up a hand. "Keep everyone inside." They were too fast for them to evacuate anyway. Sasori was staring at Deidara. Both had yet to say a word. He knew he was rethinking his opinion on him for getting them into that predicament, and what he was about to do for the sake of making himself feel better was a bit much. Destroying random settlements was also a hobby of his. On the other hand, there was the slightest chance Orochimaru decided to stay there until they were dealt with. "I'm gonna do it, And if you destroy the ring?" Deidara scoffed. "If the Sage of Six Paths really made it, would my art destroy it?" He blinked and put his hands in his clay pouch. "I'm doing it, You're a fool. And you're the top half of a puppet, Sasori my man, but I don't hold that against you." Finishing his latest sculpture, he took it out. "He's not going to like it, if he's not voicing it already." He shook his head. "Trying to be cautious is why you almost died, Besides, he's not." Sasori shrugged, not really caring. "Go ahead then." He watched the bomb drop. "Just look." Deidara held up his hands in glee. "Art is a blast." Naruto's eyes widened as it did. "What the?" He jumped, tilted his body toward the ground, and channeled concentrated wind chakra from his working hand to send himself up. "Why didn't you just?" Clucking his tongue, he repeated the process until he was close. Do you see that guy?" he asked, scope eye zooming in on the soaring young man. Sasori blinked. "I do." "How did H?" Naruto tapped it. A gale with the strength of several storms emerged from his hand and rocketed the sculpture away. He watched a massive clay bomb land on another spot of the forest. Once more, a flash lit up the night, hurting his eyes. The shock wave sent his falling form back somewhat, though not enough to send him spinning. "Son of a bitch." Deidara chewed clay into flying birds with his mouth hands. "Who the hell are you?" "He can't hear you." Sasori deadpanned. Twitching, he threw them at his new enemy. "I know, Squinting, Naruto could make out the flying sculptures in the distance. He aimed more wind chakra at the ground to regain some altitude, held out his hand, and concentrated swirling fire chakra at its center. Whirling fire erupted from his palm, growing and consuming all before they could reach him. Changing fire to wind, countless blades whirled into a Rasengan. A twisting flick of his wrist sent it soaring through the still burning vortex. Fire and wind blended into one. The whirling blades became the feeding core to searing flame. It shot out the other side of the fire whirl and spiraled through the air, growing bigger as it flew. By the time it neared the dragon, it dwarfed them in size. Deidara was already maneuvering away from Ball of Death but couldn't stop it from incinerating one of the clay wings. Naruto brought his hands together, and twitched when only his working hand could form its half of the shadow clone jutsu sign. Damn it! He glared at the dragon spinning down and away from his range. Lucky bastard! Deidara attached himself to his creation with chakra to stop himself from falling off. Sasori covered it and himself with his iron sand, ensuring he and his puppet would endure minimal damage. They crashed through some trees and into the forest floor. Neither was hurt, but both were annoyed. I'm going to kill that whiskered little shit, He reached into his clay pouch again before iron sand swept over his side, careful not to mix with his open wound. Sasori swept himself over and raised himself with the grains to look him straight on. Blonde hair? Blue eyes? I know what I look like, my man. You saw whiskers? Why are you? Drifting off, he came to the conclusion his partner already had. Out here near Orochimaru's main base? The Leaf has been taking up whatever work it can get as of late. Don't we have some top spy who lives there? How the hell did he miss the Jinchuriki going rogue? Better question is why we weren't informed, Sasori murmured. Or if our leader even knows. He looked to the direction of the nearest Akatsuki hideout. Deidara struggled to free himself to no avail. Can you let me go, You're going to repair this, and we're going to leave. He was unfazed by his disbelieving face. If you think you have a chance of winning after what he did to your bomb, you're worse than a fool, you're an idiot. Come on, Sasori my man, don't be like that. We're going, and that's final. He sighed. Fine, you're right. Relaxing, the iron sand moved off him. But when we finally move on the Jinchuriki, we're the first to bring one back, That will probably be Kakuzu. Why is he even with us? He set his hands on his crippled creation and began chewing with them. Likely for our bounties. Sasori shot him a glance. I know you don't believe in our goal. Nodding, he scoffed. I just want to practice my art, same as you. Killing Itachi was a personal bonus. Naruto was back on his rooftop by the time they started their repairs. He stared at the one other person of note on it. Really, he wanted to slice him open, but that would have been pointless. What he really needed was an explanation. That was Deidara of the Akatsuki. Orochimaru elaborated. Sasori of the Red Sand was with him, and is also a member of the Akatsuki. He could see the gears turning in his protege's head. You were setting them up before we were followed. He nodded. Did you manage to kill one? Probably not. Then we should go. He stepped in the exact opposite direction of his headquarters. What about? Drifting off, Naruto realized where the original smoke cloud was. Oh. His heart ached for a moment. Why? They may have recognized you, and they would still come back after what you did even if they didn't. If you were to fight several S-rank criminals here, more than a few civilians would be killed in a crossfire. Good point. He looked down and frowned. You don't need anyone anymore. Soon you will be powerful enough on your own. Without a word, he followed Orochimaru. Kuro stood by in silence, knowing he couldn't do anything. Saying goodbye to Rika, as much as he wanted to, didn't feel right. Those words were meant for someone else, and it would be wrong of him to give them to her. He'd proven unworthy of giving such sentiments already. An explosion, however powerful, still was limited in range depending on its material. Granted, the fuel for Deidara's was far more than the common explosions. The two new desolate craters could attest to that. Everything laying on the surface and some ways beneath was gone. Creatures far underneath still lived, albeit shaken from what they could feel. Suigetsu, pressed against an unconscious Yugo in a ball of chakra chains, groaned. Can you let go now? Hold on. Lowering the protective dome to just one tying them, Karen shot another out through the ground around Kabuto's limp form. There we go. Hell. He bit through his watery tongue when she dug upward, dragging them along with her. She took a deep breath of air the moment she reached the surface before pulling the others out. How do you weigh so much? Your water! He floated on to his feet after the chain around him disappeared. Not really. There was also the matter of the giant sword on his back. Eyes widening, he looked at their barren surroundings. Damn! Those two weirdos are gone. She looked to the unconscious group of umbus still beneath the earth, having endured the shock wave with little protection. The others are alive. She squinted at him when she felt the relief in his chakra. What? What? Pervert. She adjusted her earthy glasses. He scoffed. I was surprised. Shut up. Kabuto wheezed. He tried to push himself up but collapsed. I just had to come back. Turning onto his back, he looked up to the sky. Mother! Oh right, you're poisoned. Too late for removal. His focus on enhancing his immune system was broken during his brief torture, and he just barely managed to maintain consciousness after enduring the force of the explosion. Sighing, Karen walked over to him and pulled down her sleeve. Here. Suigetsu tilted his head in confusion. Kabuto's blurring vision could barely make out her bite mark-ridden arm. He knew what they meant from times he assisted with Orochimaru's experiments, but he was surprised she was offering it to him. You're the only somewhat normal person here. Suigetsu shot her a look. Hey! That's sad. Kabuto bit into her forearm, connecting his body to hers. HNG? More potent chakra than his body was familiar with surging through him, he jumped onto his feet. So this is what it feels like. He focused his healing sensory on his body. Antibodies already, but the parasites still live. Can you get them out? Karen asked. First, we get out of here. He looked at their unfamiliar surroundings. We can't go back to Mori Town with these Abdurrahim parasites. Running, he shifted his gaze to the high trees in the distance. Suigetsu followed alongside Karen, who dragged Yugo's limp body along in another ball of chains. Why not just kill him? Because I'm unfamiliar with this Abdurrahim strain. They're only seeping poison into our blood. It could be they can tear apart our internal organs and are operating off their last given command. If their host is killed and more parasites of the same breed enter us relaying the information, they may go berserk. Why not the others then? He caught up. It's complicated. You know who that girl is, don't you? Kabuto's masked face turned to him. Do you? Something to do with Naruto. He frowned when he returned his focus ahead. Are you really going to be like that? Don't tell him. His frown worsened. Why the hell not? Because the best thing that will happen is him returning to the Leaf Village. Root was an organization he was more than familiar with, and Orochimaru enlightened him of Anko's sadism long before he experienced it. And the worst thing is, he struggled to imagine all the horrid things that had spawned from an even more unhinged Naruto. If you think he's bad now, you'll think that was him at his best. Can you at least tell me what happened? Suigetsu stared out into the greenery as they left the crater. All of this shit is going on, and I haven't been told so much as to fucking why. You know Naruto's a Jinchuriki, yeah? I mean, why is he here? What is he doing all this for? And who are these people? Kabuto murmured, still not knowing the second question himself. I'll answer what I can. To his left, Karen kept pace despite their unconscious ally's weight. She wondered the same thing, but she could never get an answer from him. He kept them close yet only seemed attached to Yugo, who didn't really care what he was after as long as he was near him. Kitsune Mask despised them personally despite having never met beforehand. Longing and love sprung from her chakra when she asked where he was. No, she whispered to herself. Kabuto eventually stopped at a tree, climbed it, and ran back down. Aware of where they were heading, he adjusted their course somewhat. They were leaving tracks, but he knew more than a few ways how to eliminate them. Getting the parasites out of them would be painful, and the only real difficulty. It would be some time before they could regroup with Naruto. Chapter 65, Sinking Feeling. Waking up in complete darkness would worry most people, but it wasn't a cause for concern without other factors. Being surrounded by dirt was one of them. Not quite remembering how you got in that situation was another. Struggling to breathe was in itself something to be alarmed over though. All would have made even the most stoic panic. Hinata activated her Byakugan, streamed a slight jolt of lightning through her savior to wake her, and made out tracks their first enemies left. Anko-sensei. Wha? Anko rose, uncurling herself off her. Shit! The others are unconscious a few feet behind us. She looked up before tunneling back towards them. Lightweight twinks! Reaching the other Earth-style user with some further instruction by her student, she shocked both root agents. Awakening, Sai reached for the tanto on his back and froze when he made out her mask. Their situation clicked in his mind. He grabbed Torian's still unmoving body, took a deep breath, and began digging upward with them following. Whatever air they had left, besides being hard to take in, wasn't sustainable. They reached the surface in time, albeit heaving. Both conscious spies examined their surroundings, looked to their youngest, and followed her lead along the drag marks left behind. Her pace began to slow. When she stopped them by a tree, she dropped to her knees. Sai ran up it while Anko watched her. Damn it! Tears streamed down her cheeks. Damn it! She fell onto her hands. I was so close! Balling them into fists, she punched the grass. He was right there! Frustrated sobs left her lips. Always chasing you? I'm always chasing you! I had you. Why did I let you go? Anko gingerly lifted her into an embrace. She understood her feelings more than anyone, save maybe Naruto. They had him in the palm of their hands, and their love let him free to pursue his own path. Even if well-intended, the consequences were anything but well for everyone involved. 1 minute or so after, Sai ran and jumped down at a safe enough height. There is another crater to the east and a town to the northwest. They couldn't have hid their tracks from the Byakugan if they were running from those two. She hummed, stroking the top of Hinata's head beneath her hood. Not like Orochimaru to make two hideouts close together either, but he did plan to ambush those Akatsuki here. Tilting her own, she looked to the direction of the settlement. Either they were told about both before coming here or maybe someone from there knew about it and did. An unlikely possibility. Regardless, it is our only lead, and the fate of the village is at stake. This could be our last opportunity. She looked down at her snuggling, whimpering student. What's a few more hours? With a nudge, she put her aside along with her grief. Together, with Torian's unconscious body, they traveled to the settlement. Hinata broke out of her stupor and took point when a certain house entered her vision. Saying the patrolling renegade ninja were inadequate against them would be an understatement. None could sense their presence, much less beat them. A man of some high rank was pondering his predicament before getting choked out. Sai set Torian down to bound him while Anko followed Hinata to another section of the house. They stopped in front of a closed room only one of them could see into. Judging from the way she shook and balled her hands, Anko had a good idea of what was inside. A feminine uttering when the door opened confirmed it. And Naruto? A meek voice asked. Anko put a hand on Hinata's shoulder before she could do anything. I'm an old friend of his. It was far too much of a coincidence for anyone with a modicum of sense to believe. Naruto wasn't there to present her, the hour was beyond late, and two of the loudest noises she ever heard went off consecutively. Even if she was telling the truth, everything about their situation warranted caution. She was defenseless, as she almost always was, too. Looks like I just missed him. She slid comforting arms around her student. Do you know where he went? No. She looked down for confirmation and hummed at a trembling nod. Any ideas? She squinted at the girl's blank, staring eyes. I'm afraid not. Another confirmation from her cuddly made her frown. Well, that's disappointing. She tilted her head. Care to explain why you're in his home this late? The girl blushed and wisely refrained from asking her the same question. Before he came, I would stay with other families if they'd have me. She tilted her own. He cares for others but acts harsh and cruelly so he's not seen as weak. Her brow creased at a growl-like noise from below where the strange woman's voice originated. Is someone with you? Did you fuck? Anko asked, cutting out all indirectness. Her pink cheeks turned scarlet. No. Hinata relaxed in her embrace, but she knew she was still angry from her own jealous encounter. Good boy. She patted the top of her head for reassurance. Can you tell me who you are? Good choice of words, and I already did. I'm an old friend of Naruto's. My apologies. She stopped herself from swallowing, which the only one who could see every slight movement in her body saw. Is there anything else I can help you with? Pondering the question, she looked down at Hinata. There was little to be gained from interrogating the civilian further, but she wondered what she'd do without restraint and how Naruto would react. It wasn't like the blind girl was someone important outside of her connection to him. He would blame himself because, besides loving her, it would have never happened if he stayed loyal. Same went for herself to a very limited degree if he learned what she did. Hinata stepped forward the moment her comforting restraints were gone. She stopped inches away from the girl. There was some similarities, mostly the eyes, but they were opposites. Who she most resembled was her old self, the meek waif Naruto thought was pathetic. Are you also a friend of his? She didn't know whether to laugh or scoff. Really, she wasn't sure at all what to feel or do. Her hopes were raised only to be squashed twice. Infidelity, even restricted to the emotional variety, was reprehensible. The vow to never be replaced by anyone in his mind was broken. All so soon was too much. Anko summoned her back with 2 clicks of her tongue. If by any chance he comes back, say his first stopped by, he'll know what it means. She stepped out of the room, slid the door shut, and went back to where the other half of their team was. Long having restrained their other potential source of information, Sa was molding an underground space in the house yard to interrogate him with the minimal possibility of alerting any passing guards. Anko helped with the finishing touches. Hinata, out of her own volition, shocked their captive conscious. The man made no attempt to resist or call for help. It was obvious who they were. He sat up straight as much as he could in his bindings. I didn't know we were working for Orochimaru. Where's the boy? Anko asked. You're after. He convulsed as the kitsune masked girl shocked him. I don't know. The next shock was far stronger. Really, I don't know. Lightning shot through nearly every one of his nerves until the masked woman pulled her away from him. Let him breathe. She set her aside and leaned forward almost sweetly. Are you sure? I'm sure. She looked to Hinata and nudged her head in his direction. Observing, she gave the occasional pointer. There were moments where she kept at it too long, but she seemed to know when to relent just before she'd intervene. He'd repeat his answer with growing sincerity each time he was allowed to speak. When she accepted he was telling the honest truth, she let it continue for a few more minutes, wanting something to alleviate her frustration. Ninja of his ability wouldn't warrant memory locking, and his demeanor lacks signs of torture resistance training. He doesn't know. Sai deadpanned, eyes locked on his twitching body. Anko sighed. He'd be an idiot to come back. The man unknown to them whimpered. At least I am finally free of that monster. He groaned at the clinking of a drawn kunai. By the time Hinata realized what she was doing, her mask had fallen off and she was stabbing him in the throat for the 5th time. She didn't stop. Frustration left her with every stab. His blood splattered across her face, barely missing her eyes and on her sweater. It went on for minutes even after he died until the red slicking her gloves made the sharp metal slip out from her grip. Anko stared at the corpse in surprise. He could have told us what Naruto was doing or about anyone who might have come to see him. Noticing her trembling, she embraced her from behind and shushed her. It's really not that important. She could feel the judging dead gaze at the back of her head. You should still wait until we're absolutely sure they're of no use from here on out. Her continued shaking spurred her to turning her around. Hey! She took off her own mask and leaned in close. Hinata flinched when she licked her sully cheek. She turned away out of embarrassment, but her gloved hands guided her back. Not needing any more direction, she trembled in position as the blood was lapped away. A furious blush blended with the red on her face the moment Anko's tongue neared her lips. The feelings unsettling her faded, her focus on the awkwardness more than her vicious outburst. There you go. She giggled at her cleaned yet flustered look, her own cheeks red. We can still ask the girl. Spotting Sai staring from the corner of her eye, she turned to him. What? She shrugged it off and put her mask back on alongside her before leading them out of the underground space into the halls of the Lord's house. How did you know he was here anyway? Stopping by one of the rooms, she slid its door open, revealing it filled to the brim with ramen packets. There were blonde strands of hair, thanks to his new quantity, around the entire place. Orange shirts and jackets were in the master bedroom's closet. Both of the latter details would have been coincidences if it wasn't for the abundance of his favorite food. Anko stopped, looked inside, and laughed. Adorable, like a kid spending their first inheritance. They continued onward, seeking what little information remained. For several hours straight, the rogue misfits trekked through the woods. Kabuto had Sujetsu, to his annoyance, turn into a living wave to carry them soon after they left, leaving no signs of their movements for a great amount of distance. They eventually reached one of the many farms dotting the land of rice. It was guarded by men from a neighboring town, as all were, but they were little more than nuisances. Kabuto sat down and made an incision in the underside of his rib with a flick of his hand. Step 1. He brought his hands together, concentrating his chakra into unstructured substance. When enough water formed, he separated them and guided the small body into his own, subjecting himself to one of the greatest pains he'd ever felt as it squirmed to envelop as much as the parasites it could. Step T2. Karen gulped at his spasming form. Is there any other way? Only his tortured gasps answered her. Sujetsu observed out of morbid fascination. I knew this was a medic-neen procedure, but who came up with this crazy-ass idea? He snarled out drivel at the squirming around his lungs and heart. TSDS Tsunade. After he finished scrubbing his majorly affected organs, he practically flung the invasive substance back out from where it came. I can't sense the foreign chakra in you anymore, Karen said. 2. He closed his eyes and concentrated on himself again. 1 more. Groaning, he brought his hands together for the second time. She flinched as he began writhing again. Can't you dull pain? She watched him finish the extraction and stepped back when he pushed himself to his feet. He twitched, sighed, and held out his hand. Have you ever heard of medics not operating on themselves? Yee. She flopped to the ground the moment he touched her head. Suigetsu laughed. Well, that's disappointing. He wavered, the world around him blurring. Shit. Hydrify. Kabuto scanned her form, made the incision into her, and brought his hands together. If you do transform water you consume into your own flesh, you can just send out what you're currently using to compose your internal organs. He became a watery image of himself but didn't say a word. That would kill him. None of his clan were actually made completely of water. They could only turn themselves and close objects into liquids at will and reflex thanks to an unthinkable permanent jutsu. Dehydration was a side effect of consumed water evaporating thanks to the temporary loss of skin. For a few seconds, he became a series of rapid currents in the shape of a man, diluting the poison as much as he could. Kabuto didn't need to turn attention away from his current operation to know what he was doing. Make sure you don't move anything from your chest to your brain. He ignored Karen's unconscious squirming while isolating the parasites. Suigetsu solidified, watched, and waited until he finished. Alright, spill. Before deserting the hidden leaf, Naruto slept with the former Hyuga clan heiress. His eyes widened. Whoa. Blinking, his brow furrowed. Wait, former? Irrelevant. He sat down and shook his masked head. I don't know what exactly happened. She either knew or the Hokage thought she knew what he was planning. There hasn't been a single word in the Leaf's forces about the incident, save for the sudden deaths of 3 genin on a false scouting mission report to conceal what actually happened. Someone of her status couldn't be disappeared without drawing questions, so she was likely held in custody for some time. Sighing, he looked down. That girl was her, Hinata Hyuga. Why the hell is she on an Umbu mission dealing with the guy she helped? He scoffed. Back in the mist, we'd slit her throat and be done with it, high caste or not. Because those weren't Umbu at all. They're Danzo Shimura's personal agents. There was not a single person in any kind of prestigious position and clan that didn't know who the Shinobi of Darkness was or what he did. Oh. Fuck. Kabuto nodded. You have some idea of what she's been put through then. Back when I was 1, initiates were paired together and made to kill one another after they bonded enough to be considered kin. He recalled her brief pauses. Too young for it to be effective and none of the usual marks. She had to have been put through some other conditioning. The questioning stare he received was expected and not at all offensive. He didn't trust himself either. So Naruto's crazy, brainwashed girlfriend is after us? More or less, yes. Well, damn. He tilted his head. Then who's the dom? Anko Midarashi, Orochimaru's former right hand and last star pupil. You have to be fucking kidding me. My literal exact reaction. Kabuto sighed. She was really close to Naruto and had to be the one who brought Hinata to Danzo. He shared his flabbergasted look. If he finds out, he'll lose his shit. He stood up and walked to the patch of grass they left Yugo in. Exactly. Crouching down, he set a hand on him. Don't tell them. Suigetsu squinted. You trust me? I know you won't feel guilty for keeping the truth from him. He stood back up, having seen no traces of the parasites nor their poison in his body. Okay, what about those 2 Akatsuki? That was something he could divulge to all. He'd tell the other 2 when they'd wake. Besides that, there was still several safety precautions needing taking to ensure all traces of the insects were obliterated. Orochimaru told him before it all started where he expected to see him again, and he had an information network to manage. Babysitting any further would be detrimental as it would be annoying. Everything became far too quiet after Kakuza fled. Sakura rose from the ground, confused and alarmed, before Kakashi could sink to retrieve her. They regrouped with Kiba, handed care of the nobles to their guard, and scoured the immediate area as best they could to no avail. Haiden either burned to a crisp or escaped, which was the likely outcome if their luck was anything to go by. Kakashi and Guy collapsed when it was done thanks to their grievous wounds. Palace medics tended to them while the others split between who was still wired from soldier pills and those who desperately needed rest. Sakura, lacking any ability to single out Haiden were he to return in disguise, was in the guards' quarters watching their savior rise in the afternoon. Oh. Thank you? Bowing her head, her thoughts turned to her brief capture. Who knows what that monster was planning to do to me? He was drifting off, he yawned. After me before he changed focus to your group. He slipped out of bed as his head ached. I was just trying to eliminate an enemy. She tilted her own. Where are you going? That's no concern of yours. You're leaving? Sakura's face scrunched at his stretching form. Just like that? She nearly facepalmed. The steam daimyo was in our charge, and you saved him. It was not my intention. He molded his chakra into sensory form, getting an overview of who was in his immediate vicinity. Huh, she stared in disbelief as he began walking toward the exit. At least stay to eat something. Yudakata froze, sleep deprivation no longer blocking out his starvation. I can do that. Her face scrunched at him, continuing onward. What? She followed, not wanting to let him go just yet. Ignoring the questioning looks from passerby guardsmen he was all too used to, he wandered about. His self-invited company gave directions when it was clear he had no idea where he was going. She led him to the dining room where leftovers from lunch remained and watched him pile on as much as he could on a single plate. They stopped in the quarters where the rest of the Leaf Shinobi were staying, Sakura wanting others to help and watching him. Kakashi, scarf in place of his mask, observed him gorging on roasted pheasant from his bed, Guy practically mummified on the one next to him. He must have hounded after you for quite some time. Yudakata hastily chewed and gulped. Unfortunately, he's still alive. I could sense his chakra fleeing. He practically shoved another piece into his own mouth. Not surprising considering he survived the first Hokage. Guy chimed in. Is there a bounty on you? Sakura asked. Or did he think the mist would reward him for bringing you back? Afraid it's worse than both. Kakashi began, seeing no harm in informing those present. Kakuzu joined an organization called the Akatsuki some time ago, and their goal seems to be capturing the Jinchuriki. He ignored the questioning faces of his comrades in favor of the stern, munching strangers. Each member is supposedly an S-rank criminal. Kakuzu may try to hunt you again with dangerous help. Swallowing, Yudakata frowned. Only disaster could come from anyone seeking all Jinchuriki out, much less a group of powerful shinobi. A leaf ninja telling him of such trouble instead of his former village meant they encountered them, or, the likelier possibility, just had a better information network than the new mist. Naruto didn't mention it, so he either forgot to in the heat of his emotions or was never told. Why didn't you tell us? Sakura scrunched her face at her sensei. Kakashi, knowing she wouldn't be pleased regardless of what he said, nearly sighed. I didn't want you worried any more than you already were. Yudakata furrowed his brow for a moment before shrugging it off, returning his attention to his meal. He finished sometime after the girl left to assist guardsmen recovering the bodies Kakuzu impaled in his attempt to kill them. While leaving as soon as possible was for the best, he didn't mind staying for dinner. It would have been too discourteous to the lord of the palace to leave without paying his respects, however limited they were. Such acts were reserved for freeloading hermits. He most definitely was not, in spite of everything about him suggesting so. A few hours passed until a servant stopped by to alert them. Guy took point, unwilling to let his injuries stifle his youthful energy no matter how detrimental it might be, with Yudakata and Kakashi lagging behind. Other shinobi joined them on the way, occasionally glancing at the odd one out. The daimyo, dour, silent, and distant, was already present at the head of the table by his worried mother and old servant. Each took their seats and almost all immediately began eating. What does it mean to be a Jinchuriki? Sasuke blurted. He almost looked away from a questioning eyebrow and a few looks. Specifically, what is it like? Raising a hand to his chewing chin, Yudakata pondered why he'd ask and how to answer it before swallowing. Being cursed. He frowned. Because of someone else's decision or by your own mistake, you are the host to a being no one can truly comprehend. Worse, for all intents and purposes, you may as well be it to those around you. Let's say shinobi are removed from the common man by 1 degree of separation. Jinchuriki are removed from shinobi by 5. His eyes stared through him into nothingness. All shinobi are tools, but Jinchuriki in particular serve a role too vital for the great villages to ever drift away from that purpose. Our accomplishments mean nothing to others because we were made to succeed. Few approach us thanks to fear and hate, and we distrust those who do because of what we can expect. They narrowed. It doesn't end until the day we inevitably die, whether on the battlefield or by the hands of our own village when we're too old to be effective anymore. He looked down at his plate. There were times he felt like he was cursed, but it wasn't anywhere near that extent. It would all end when he killed Itachi, at least he hoped it would. Not telling Naruto about the Mangekyo meant more than he thought it did. Kakashi focused on their host. Your Majesty, we've fulfilled the parameters of our mission. He ignored the furious glare from his mother. We may be unable to return to our village in this state, however. If we just so happen to eliminate anyone who threatens you at that TI, that is unnecessary, he said, attracting all their attention. The payment will be delivered to your village. He turned to the Jinchuriki. I was told of who you are and what you did in service of my people. You can leave whenever you wish. Minoru! Hitomi scolded with worry in her voice. Guards, escort my mother to her chambers. He looked to his nearest man. Do not let her out regardless of what she orders you to. His oldest attendant put a hand against his own chest as the servants reluctantly obeyed their master. Your Majesty, please, Yoshio, I will confine to your quarters if you speak against me again. Minoru's voice and face betrayed no emotion whatsoever. There is much you have both kept from me. He turned to the observing shinobi. Thank you for everything. He bowed his head in respect. They did the same, albeit with hesitance born of concern. From a professional perspective, nothing more needed doing. It was harrowing personally for someone to essentially ask them to let them die. None knew him personally enough to really talk to him, and the young ones were still processing what happened themselves. Little more than platitudes meaning little from strangers could be given anyway. Utakata, thinking of the last person he wasn't truly able to help, frowned. The gears turned in his head with the final piece of the odd puzzle he walked into. Few people would ever hold interest in the Jinchuriki unless they had experiences with them. Even fewer would be worried, which meant some kind of personal connection. It was quite the coincidence, but that was hardly the first time life put him in such a situation. Naruto Uzumaki, he muttered just loud enough for only them to hear. For the rest of dinner, none said a word. Each shinobi left after having their fill. Those who finished first were waiting for him in their designated quarters, and they in turn waited until everyone else caught up. Any normal person who walked in would have the instinct to walk out pretending they didn't witness a single thing. Kakashi led with the most important question. Do you know where he is? I crossed paths with him a little more than 2 months ago. He was with 2 other men, one who could control the flow of his own chakra and another with enough powerful, odd chakra to rival a tailed beast. Orochimaru and another one of his experiments. Utakata blinked. One of them was Orochimaru. Did he tell you where he was going or what he was doing? He only told me his ultimate goal was to destroy the shinobi system. He frowned. If I knew he was being accompanied by Orochimaru, you sound like you really care for him, Kiba said, furrowing his brow. We are Jinchuriki. I don't expect you to understand. Sakura had nothing but the utmost concern on her face. Was he okay? No. Utakata sighed. He was walking the edge of the abyss. He grimaced. I'm not sure what use my words had with a bad influence like that about. And those were? Sasuke questioned. The interrogation he invited himself to wouldn't end soon. He couldn't blame them. It was the biggest existential threat to their village and the rest of the shinobi world. None of what he could tell them would help in his capture, but he could at least offer some peace of mind at the very least. Wherever Naruto was, he wouldn't care. Countless of Orochimaru's bases permeated the land. A large number of them were in the land of rice, so finding and settling down in one after the biggest was blown up took no time at all. It was small as far as they typically went, but that was of little concern. The only settlements nearby were too small to be near any roads and too far for their inhabitants to cross their paths. The forest around the hideout was littered with scars. Fist indents, spirals, electric branching, and missing chunks marked nearly every tree. Being inanimate objects, they made terrible sparring partners and mediocre training dummies. It wasn't as if the creator of those marks had options, though. Even if I could make clones, I'd only be learning how to fight myself at half my ability with that same half. Naruto looked down at his clenched working hand. I can kill an entire squad with my wind blade in the blink of an eye, but that's not enough. His Raisin Shuriken was an outright detriment to himself. The Raisin Hirai could at least devastate an army at the expense of crippling one of his hands for a time. Fire, earth, and water evolved Raisingans were theoretically possible. Both of his experiences told him they'd likely be just as harmful. With a hum, he sat in the grass. Maybe I could launch the fire and water in one direction. It'd burn and skin my hands, but it'd be better than taking them from me. He looked down. I could just impale everything around me with spikes, but that's useless against another Earth-style user. Placing his hand down flat on the ground, he shook his head, knowing his own folly. Why am I like this? Because you are human. Spiraling earth chakra spread deep throughout the soil from his hand. We don't know when to stop, do we? With far greater concentration, the world began to shift around him. Trees, ancient and young alike, were uprooted. Wildlife scrambled about in vain, trying to find stable ground. All only fell alongside the earth. Birds flying overhead and away could see everything spiraling down from above. Soon, only blackness was visible. Naruto stared up from the epicenter of it all, clenching his still-functioning hand. I can work with this. He laughed. Lead with wind blade or wind Raisingans and then tear them apart when they sink. Laying down, he squinted, emptiness in his chest. This feeling. Ignore it. Doesn't make it go away. Kurama grumbled. Just focus on vengeance like a functional being. If you think you're functional, you have way bigger problems than I do. He scoffed. You are conversing with a being older than your entire recorded history. It would have leered down at him if they were in his mind. Hatred will keep you going when everything else fails. Naruto's lips thinned into a line before shifting into a frown. Gritting his growing teeth, his eyes reddened. The memory of someone calling out to him when he last felt such anger killed all feeling in him. He took a deep breath and sighed. It was loneliness. Chapter 66 Absent Scars. Utakata couldn't give the leaf shinobi any real useful information before they went their separate ways. All helped retrieve the last remains from Kakuzu's spikes to the grim thanks of the survivors. Roads around the palace were cleared enough to walk, but there were still civilians looking for their loved ones' corpses. Not a soul was smiling on their way out the burned city, and neither were they. Only their footsteps could be heard for quite some time through their trek. Mission accomplished, Sakura muttered. Indeed. Kakashi remained unfazed at a few looks for his matter-of-fact tone. Our objective was completed and we're all alive. He didn't feel good about how they left things either, but dwelling on it was pointless. The only difference between this mission and all our others was collateral from factors we couldn't control in the first place. Memory of their first as a team crossed his mind. Sometimes, it may seem like we fail when we succeed. Not all missions will be so clear-cut or end well. Tenten glowered straight at nothing. We know. Silence befell them again. The winter chill complemented the emptiness in there. When their woes seemed to subside, new ones took their place. News of Naruto was the perfect finish. I take it back, Dosa said. Being a ninja and having exciting work sucks. Kiba shot him a look. You couldn't do anything with your most difficult-to-face abilities? They were too busy processing to really go over what happened. Scoffing, he shook his head at the absurdity. Probably the one guy in the entire world who doesn't need eardrums to balance himself is the same guy who faced the first Hokage and tried to kill us the other night. He blinked his single eye. What happened on your side of things? That crazy bastard lit himself on fire. Kiba nearly stepped back at them all, turning to him with the same look of confusion. Why? Sasuke asked, voicing their thoughts. He looked down at Akamaru as he looked up. We were beating the shit out of him, and he couldn't see any other way of creating an opening or getting away. Lee and Guy zipped to his sides to slap his back. The results of your training. He watched their mummified sensei lift him into the air. Your youth burned so hot only actual flames could match. Guy shifted his grip into a crushing hug. Thanks. Kiba groaned. But can you let me down? It is kind of impressive, Tenten said, watching his release. He didn't have his scythe, but it's not like he was completely reliant on it. She didn't expect to see him again, whether from her own death or his, but she'd keep that to herself. He frowned as he stretched his sides. Still wasn't enough. If it were Kimimaro, he'd have died, and the same could be said of Naruto. Sasuke thought the same thing of his throbbing left eye. Given the right circumstances, he could surprise and assassinate even his own brother by teleporting behind him. He'd be dead if he missed or didn't go for the neck though. Polished fundamentals were universally applicable and reliable, in contrast at the cost of being harder to refine. Testing either would have to wait until they were back in friendly territory. Frowning still, Sakura sighed. We all need more training. She looked to their teachers. Even you too. I'll have to do 500 laps around the village, 500 dips, 500 curls, and 500 squats when we get back. Guy bounced with determination. Why don't you join me, Kakashi? My answer was, and will always be no. He deadpanned. Pure physical conditioning doesn't do much for my skill set. Looking up to the snowy sky, his eye narrowed. I've been making too many sloppy moves. Dosa kept his on the road. Hope you guys don't mind if I keep getting special attention. He glanced from teammate to teammate when they focused on him. Let's face it, my sound element is the one thing I have and I can't use a single jutsu all the time. Tenten was alike with sealing and weapons but wouldn't say it out loud. When they returned, she'd have to ask Sakura and Sasuke for favors, preferably when Dosa wasn't around. If all her weapons were like Sakura's blade, there would be little need for extra strength. Everything would come down to her skill and tactics. The current wind-style users could create still required some kind of counter for her ranged attacks though. Do you think Lady Hokage is going to be pissed at us? Kiba asked, tired of trouble and drama. Kakashi shook his head. We succeeded, so probably not. Mission accomplished, Sakura said again in a far more bitter tone. Sasuke, putting a hand on her shoulder, alleviated her somewhat. I'm sorry to say you get used to it. He sighed. But if you come to find disasters like those acceptable or think there's no meaning in moving on, you'll end up exactly like that man. She parted her lips but said nothing. It wasn't their first time coming across a rogue ninja doing something in hopes of enacting change. Although Zabuza was playing mercenary instead of terrorist. Even Naruto could count, as much as she hated to compare them. The sheer scale and methodology didn't seem like anything a shinobi, however morally bereft, would do. That stuff about the Umbu? Dosa asked, isolating his voice to just their sensei due to its personal nature. He kept walking. Worst thing I ever did happened before I joined. He whispered. Wow. Flinching at his normal volume of tone, he pointed at an odd-looking cloud to divert attention. That's terrifying. Their figures grew distant from the city. If anyone were watching them, they wouldn't think anything of it. As horrible as the ordeal was, none were its true victims, unlike their last shared mission. Wounds from that night would heal eventually. Everyone who lived in that city would bear them forever. As much as Hinata and Anko wished the girl could tell them anything useful, she knew little. Naruto was training with the ragtag group they encountered, which they could put together themselves. They went back to the capital and began clearing every single piece of evidence they were there. When they were nearly done, Torian awakened to help them with the finishing touches. It was sometime in the afternoon when they were back in friendly territory. They rented 2 separate rooms for a big inn at a relatively large settlement near the border. Wearing their normal clothes and with leaf forehead protectors, no one questioned them. Both girls decided to wash off the grime from all their work before going to bed. As soon as they submerged themselves in water, Hinata buried her face in Anko's chest, whimpering. I know. She stroked her hair as she shushed. He still loves you, he's just a guy. They can't help it, especially when they've been alone as long as he has. Holding her close, she giggled. You saw how she looked like. He latched onto her because she reminded him of you so much. Hinata looked up, Byakugan activating. When we catch him, I'm going to hurt him until he can't bear to look at any woman other than me ever again. Anko inched back. Whoa! She laughed as the girl hid her red face in her chest again. I had something like that in mind, but it'd be a bit difficult with Tsunade being a woman, wouldn't it? He'd just stare at her breasts. She mumbled. You'll probably end up bigger than her. Get pregnant like you plan to, and you definitely will. Her head tilted up at the thought. She used them to seduce Naruto into bed, and he was more than enamored with her then. Even without the emotional connection, she probably would have succeeded. That could very well be the key to ensuring his complete fidelity. Look at you forgetting all about that guy you killed. Feeling her shake at those words, she leaned her lips down by her ear. It's all right. She stroked her head until she stilled. He was some useless renegade scum we would have probably killed anyway. A grin spread across her face. Who you really wanted to stab over and over again was that little blind bitch, wasn't it? Gritting her teeth, Hinata practically growled. She saw into his heart. Her anger turned to sadness. I trained so hard to reach him, and I actually managed to stop him. Tears left her eyes. I betrayed everyone and put myself on the line so he would always keep it open for me. Veins near them bulged. I'm a slave, and she gets what I sacrificed everything for just because she looks like me? All feeling left her with the realization she said what she couldn't bear to admit. Enko's lips thinned into a line. You know, I've seen into it too, right? Aye. The feeling of water, however warm, urged her to scurry away as fast as she could, but she was pulled into a sickly sweet embrace before she could cut off all contact. Calm down. Take a deep breath. She smiled as the girl obeyed. We grew up a lot alike, so I could tell he's got a lot of issues and a lot of soft spots he doesn't want anyone to know about. As long as it's you, I don't mind. Looking down, her smile grew. Why? Because. Hinata's blank eyes grew hazy. They cleared as her cheeks reddened. I love you, Anko-sensei. Something about her words was wrong, but not believing them would be painful. Her smile grew so wide it bared her teeth. When you say something like that, it makes me want to never let you go. She held her tighter. Don't worry, I won't get between the two of you. She rested her lips by her ear again. Unless you want me to. Absolutely crimson, she relaxed in her arms. It was impossible for her to tell when she was teasing or serious at times. Giving her a definite answer was a horrible idea, consequence of not being her decision to begin with. Better to relax just as they did after the time she dug deep in her mind. There was already enough for her to process. She picked her up and carried her out when they were done bathing. Falling back onto one of the two beds, she nuzzled her cheek. Tsunade wasn't going to be pleased, not that she seemed to expect them to succeed in the first place. Falling asleep alongside someone else was a luxury she wouldn't be privy to again anytime soon. With that thought, she snapped out of her relaxed stupor. Blowjob Slug Princess is definitely going to have us followed when we get back. Danzo recommending us and handpicking his own agents had to make her realize something was happening. She pouted as her student whimpered. We'll both have to get used to being away from each other for a while. Losing them to meet up will just make us look even more suspicious. If that happens, she'll have a Yamanaka look into our heads and find out we have resistance to it we shouldn't. Hinata tilted hers. We do? Orochimaru developed several methods to hide memories you wouldn't want seen before we left the village in case he was ever questioned. She stroked her naked back. Yours isn't nearly as subtle. I don't remember you teaching me any. Enko grinned. That's because I taught you an entirely different, albeit related, lesson. She was tempted to shock her for emphasis, but punishment without a reason was unwarranted. Oh. She returned her nuzzling, like a kitten to a petting hand. You poor sweet thing. Cooing, she shifted from her back to her head. You have to be patient for a little while longer. They both had to really. When he's ours, either of us will be alone or have to go through so much pain ever again. She hummed happily at the thought. The weeks after he left were the worst of her entire life. If enduring another 5 days of absolute misery would bring him back, she would bear it, albeit screaming and crying the entire time. Retiring from her short-lived and failed shinobi career to be with her beloved was probably the best path left for her. Others could think what they wished. She already ruined her standing in all walks of life with one grievous mistake. While it was a failure from their perspective, they knocked down one of 2 support beams keeping the land of Rice stable, opening an opportunity for aspiring shinobi lords to gain power and someone else to find their target bereft of a headquarters. The intersection to most nations never ceased reigning. It was a small nation into itself, though the others never really acknowledged it until recently. Within the decades after the Second Shinobi World War, its capital became the most surveilled settlement in the entire world. A ninja would have to excel beyond anyone's expectations to infiltrate it, much less the sanctum of its leader. Even if they did, they wouldn't find him there. In a bleak concealed hovel, an emaciated red-haired man restrained in a cauldron-like mechanism with rods impaling his back frowned. I'm waiting. A figure stepped out of the darkness into his view. How did they perform? There was no fear in his voice at his ire. Poorly. His purple, ringed eyes narrowed at his mask. Now elaborate. You'd send a team after him to die and potentially expose the Akatsuki to greater scrutiny from the other villages. I thought you would take him before he ever grew this strong. He gave a humph. I said I would monitor the Leaf Village. Securing the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki is an impossible task for me. The confused look on his withered face was almost amusing. You are the only one I can see succeeding at this point. How is it impossible? Even when he was an infant you couldn't? Shaking his head, he nearly sighed. There would be no method to control him. All known sealing methods would break when he'd inevitably bond with the Nine Tails, and he would have killed all of us with practically infinite chakra to throw around. He turned to look out into nothing. I was hoping the seal would break during the Chunin exams, but somehow he was capable of drawing out nearly all its power. Then we should have put it in the statue first. With that, the masked man laughed. Oh yes! Let's put the strongest-tailed beast inside a container we're not sure functions the way we think it does using relics we don't understand. He grimaced and cleared his throat, wary of his old personality peeking through his frustration. If you still can't find a sure way with those eyes, we must act with the utmost caution. He kept silent. The ring the two tried to retrieve could manipulate pure chakra, something utterly useless in most cases but would be extremely effective manipulating the state of beings composed of it. Just how eluded him. None relied on his unique abilities. As was his namesake, the god of shinobi understood chakra beyond anyone else in all of history, including him. Retrieving Orochimaru's ring and the Nine Tails are both important, but you must focus on one as long as they're together. Sasori and Kakuzu would be perfect for simple ring retrieval. Kisame and yourself would be the only chance at victory against the Nine Tails Jinchuriki we have. You could have told me all this before. He gave him a side glance. Would you have listened? Knowing he wouldn't get an answer, he swirled out of existence. Both wanted to change the world. One naturally had the means to do so while the other knew more about the one they pursued than anyone should. As little as they trusted one another, there was no benefit in fighting at that moment. Settling matters had to wait until all others were dealt with. Behind her desk, Tsunade, eyes weary and twitching from overuse, stared at four ninja. They just finished giving their mission report. It achieved what she thought it would, but the sudden encounters with no less than two different groups of dangerous shinobi gave her pause. She was almost tempted to have each submit a different written report to check for discrepancies, even if it'd likely be a waste of time. Her suspicions about Danzo's involvement aside, it was just enough to make her feel like they gained something and just enough that it didn't sit right. Anko, back in her normal outfit alongside her student, tilted her head. So, we free to go? Her eyes narrowed slightly at her leering look. You all seem to have gotten along well over 2 months for having not known each other. She turned to the two Umbu. These guys barely said anything, and I've already had time to bond with Hinata. Tsunade did the same and let her expectant gaze linger before sighing. Dismissed. She focused on the Hyuga just as she shifted toward the door. Save for you. Hinata blinked. For once, there wasn't any paperwork for her to help with. Either she thought she was the weakest link, or her father made a fuss about her deployment while she was gone. Anko gave her a glance without breaking her stride, not needing to say anything. She stared at her for a minute after the others left. Well, what, Lady Hokage? You don't think anything at all about the man you butchered? She tilted her head. Not even that I had a completely inexperienced genin in regards to covert operations take part in one of the biggest this village has ever done? Holding back a scoff, she narrowed her eyes. In which you seem to have performed astonishingly well for your first time, amazing even. I didn't really think much of it. She looked away. Tsunade grimaced and sighed. Don't tell me you were thinking of him the entire time. Her face turning red confirmed it. You are so hopeless. Why did I assign the only person who'd enable you on the same team? Enko-sensei couldn't stop me with everyone watching. Shuddering at the phantom feeling of constricting snakes, she held herself. I was so selfish. Not to mention reckless, but it all somehow worked out, so… Hinata frowned. Why did you really want to keep me? Did you notice anything off about the Umbu you worked with? She asked, cutting straight to the point. They didn't say much, and they seemed almost emotionless when they did say anything. Her apparent ignorance of her own suspiciousness gave her more relief than it did despair. Do you think they're spies? She didn't answer. Neither report she received on the two recorded anything suspicious. Sai and Toryun Aburaim were extremely socially awkward young men who kept to themselves. They were scouted out for and made Umbu more or less right out of the academy, which was prone to happening despite being unusual. It was tempting to have them both checked by the Yamanaka, but that would be an unwarranted drastic measure. Lady Tsunade? You are no longer restricted to the Hyuga compound, but I am having you monitored. The surprise and confusion on her face was to be expected. It's not like you wouldn't find out with those eyes of yours. She sighed. Just be sure to go straight to your father. We may have given him a heart attack. My. Drifting off, she realized just how abrupt her departure from the village and how long her absence was. I can't tell if your priorities are misplaced or too focused. He wasn't too pleased, I take it? She scoffed at the understatement. Let him know you're alive and to not worry about any umbu near the Hyuga's vicinity. Groaning, she grit her teeth. He'll probably have something to say about that too. It wasn't as if he could keep her from leaving the compound, but he would still protest. I will calm him. She walked out of the office with no further word and headed straight home. Something felt off the moment she was outside the Hokage residence. It was far colder than the land of rice thanks to the snow, but that couldn't be the disturbance. People gave her looks, not used to seeing Hyuga in casual clothes wandering about, but she was used to them. Her movements weren't masked like they were in the capital, yet she felt relieved rather than an underlying anxiety. One of the branch members on patrol ran into her view a small ways from his station. Lady Hinata. He bowed his head. Lord Hayashiha. He stopped when she walked past him, as if not noticing his presence. Haphazardly, she entered her family's domain. They were her kinsmen but always felt distant, a consequence of the branch system and their traditions. It wasn't as if she felt at home around main branch members either. All felt ever more away. A figure she'd known all her life dashed and stopped in front of her. Hinata. His speech was delayed to repress winded breath. It took her a moment to snap out of her daze. Father. She blinked. Lady Tsunade decreed I am free to move around the village, albeit watched. Hayashi couldn't stop himself from twitching. That woman, you couldn't stop me when I was in your custody. She knew he was more mad at the lack of caution and slight disrespect of it being with his daughter, but she liked reminding him of that. Do you intend to return to Kurenai's care? She frowned. There was a conversation with her waiting that she never wanted to have, even if she didn't blame her for what happened. It wasn't like she cared for the compound either. With Naruto gone, the one person she wanted to stay with was Anko, and going to her could have brought more unwanted attention. Her best option at that moment was finding her own place to stay. Then you will continue to live on, no? She turned to her room and began walking. I will pack my things, Hinata. He stepped after her but stopped, knowing there was nothing he could do outside physically forcing her to comply. A hall down from her room, light footsteps pitter-pattered to her side. Elder sister. The small girl nearly jumped when she turned to her, blank eyes staring as if something unseemly crossed by. Hanabi watched her disappear into her room and waited. Their father joined her, the weariness caused by her absence only growing. When she stepped back into their sight, her pack was noticeably bulkier. She gave a slight bow of her head before walking past both. The snow made sleeping out in the open as unhealthy as it'd be uncomfortable, so roughing it wasn't an option. She knew of only one place no one was, would never be checked, and likely still be maintained. It wouldn't need any breaking in either. After all, she forgot to lock it in the first place. Everything was the way she left it when she stepped back inside Naruto's apartment. Without him near to distract her, she noticed the stale and vaguely ill odor around. There were clothes in a basket he never came around to washing. The bed they shared was obviously dirtier after they used it. Whatever was in his fridge likely spoiled quite some time ago, and not so much as a courtesy breeze from an open window blew away the gathering dust. She knew he wasn't the cleanest boy from being around him during their academy days, but the state of his home was unacceptable, even to him if he were aware. Responsibility fell to her. Its interior had to be cleaned first. She transformed some of her civilian clothes into a mask, apron, and pair of gloves before getting to work with what present cleaning supplies there were. More than a few hours passed by the time it was over. While the unpleasant permeating smell was replaced by nausea-inducing chemical fumes, she, if need be, could sleep on any floor or stuck to a wall without getting dirty. Her job wasn't done though. She piled everything disposable in his fridge into the trash bin and emptied every reusable container. Throwing waste into the nearest dumpster was far quicker. Washing his dirty dishes a little less so. His laundry that would preoccupy the rest of her household duties. Nearly everyone who spotted her running around stared, Naruto's neighbors who vaguely recognized his clothing especially. A main branch Hyuga doing chores, much less someone else's, was unheard of outside the compound and never seen by the Leaf commoners. She may have very well been the first to ever willingly choose to live outside its confines. While she didn't mind being taken into Kurenai's care, it was by her father's decree. The Yuhi residence had its own washer and dryer, so she was spared the gawking until now. apartment the cleanest it had been in over nearly 2 decades, she plopped her weary body on the newly dressed bed. Memory of the last time she was in such a state on it made her warm enough to forget the snowy chill. She curled around the forehead protector next to her heart. A wall indent came into sight, giving her pause. He was alone for his entire life. Everyone knew it. She wanted to approach him so many times but could never muster the courage. It was as Anko said, she only watched like everyone else. When she finally reached him, she lost everything because she was too concerned for herself before. Tears welled in her blank eyes. No one she wanted to be held by was someone she could see. She didn't even have the living collar that leashed her, a consequence of the cold season triggering his hibernation instincts. It was still only a taste of the loneliness, he felt. When they'd meet again, parting would either be impossible or the most difficult thing either had to do. The Hokage's office fell silent once more. Its inhabitants stared off into nothing or looked down, afraid of looking their irritated leader in the eye. By most means, their mission was a success. Ramifications for what occurred during it were more obvious than the last most important report she received, though. Haydn, whoever he was, achieved what he set out to. Merchants wouldn't feel safe in roads guarded by shinobi who couldn't even protect their own capital, and the Cloud would have far less reasons to tolerate the steam's independence. Kakashi forced himself to eye-smile. If that will be, your payments will be deposited in the accounts with your names, Tsunade finally said, making a few of them jump. Confusion on his face, Kiba tilted his head. We have accounts? Where do you think your compensation for the last big mission you were on went? He blinked. Damn it, Mom. Sighing, he continued looking off at nothing. Keep it, Sakura spat. Dosa hummed. Feeling that bad, huh? Fuck you. He nearly stepped back from the animosity in her voice. I didn't mean it like that. The stiff look on her face as she walked out the office told her how little she cared. I'll go after her, Sasuke said before following. Do I really come across as that much of a dick? Dosa asked, turning to the rest. Be honest. Lee stroked his chin and thought as Guy simply gave a thumbs up, the rest staying silent. It wasn't as if they really knew him. Even his own teammates didn't, at least not enough to invite him to post-mission eat-outs. Turncoats, even when having a good reason for betraying their former allegiances, weren't trusted in highly patriotic shinobi society. Fair enough. Tsunade twitched. If you're done with your casual conversation, I'd advise leaving my office. Guy forced them all, including Kakashi, to bow. Forgive us, Lady Hokage. He turned to lead them out but collapsed face first onto the floor. About time. She walked from behind her desk to the fallen mummy. Who the hell walks around covered with barely treated third-degree burns? Channeling chakra into her hands, she set them on him. I'm surprised you're even conscious with this amount of shock, but you do use the 8 inner gates. Lee watched, heartfelt tears in his eyes. Hang in there, Guy-sensei. He'll be fine. Tenten literally waved it off. You two do this all the time. Do you think the gates increase their endurance, or they're just using the second? Kiba asked, Akamaru complimenting his words with a pondering whine. Kakashi's back met the wall. Second, great for suppressing hampering injuries and angering your medic. He slumped down. Considering it was Kakuzu you faced, it's a miracle only 2 of you need medical attention. Having put Guy into a stable state, Tsunade got to work on him. You 4 will need to carry them to the hospital. She frowned at the blood filling his chest cavity from a ruptured lung. That needs draining. Dosa gave the world's most silent groan, not that he didn't expect it with the audible sloshing only he could hear. Can one of you help me with him? Kiba looked to his teammates, who already picked up their sensei. I guess. He waited until their village had cleared before pulling Kakashi's left arm over his shoulder. They left Tsunade alone with her thoughts. If her tolerance for absurdity wasn't raised exponentially, she'd be catatonic. Events were already bound to escalate faster than they could react. Whatever came next would only be worse. Chapter 67. I Forgot to Remember to Forget. Running through the cold had various health benefits. If Guy was observing, he'd no doubt cheer them on, completely forgetting the overall context. The outer chill contrasting a rising internal warmth helped give minds clarity in some cases, such as this one. Sasuke was chasing behind Sakura out of respect for her feelings despite his ability to easily catch up. Blood flowed to her face, making it even worse, and she only kept going. They ran past and through crowds of others, across walls when the passerby numbered too many, jumped from roof to roof, and down. After a few minutes, one of the village lakes, frozen from the cold, lay ahead. Climate being what it was, no one was around. Sakura skidded to a halt onto the snowy pier before squatting down. She took a moment to catch her breath before hanging her head. I may have overreacted. Just a little. Sasuke joined her and looked over the ice. You did witness a massacre. And I lashed out at someone who also did. Humming, she really thought about it. Who probably heard their screaming and begging a lot clearer. She frowned. But he is Dosu. He's been trying. She sighed. I know. It's just. We could have saved so many people. We didn't know what we were up against, and we still don't. His eyes narrowed at the parallel riverbank. It would have taken at least 3 times our number and specialized scouts, but chances are they would have been blown up by his suicide bombers alongside the civilians, just earlier. Maybe. She looked down into the snow. I still don't feel good at all. The countless bodies surrounding the castle filled her mind. Why were we even there? He wondered the same about then and more. Most of their missions were successful, but their major ones always seemed to end bitterly. At the very least, they managed to skirt by on the skin of their teeth the first time. Doing the best they could beyond most could do at their age meant nothing if the trend continued. Even with his new Mangekyo, he was lacking, and that was unacceptable after putting so much hope into its power. They stayed there quietly for a time. Still a bit distant, each inch closer to the other, not liking the awkwardness. Nothing either could say would alleviate their feelings. Both were frustrated. I don't know what to do, Sakura admitted with a whisper. He heard it. We do what we can. A freezing breeze swept through them. They grimaced and got closer to the point one could lean on the other. It didn't let up, so they did. Whatever thoughts of embarrassment they had were drowned out by everything else on their minds. Both were warmer next to each other than they were from a distance, and that's all that really mattered at that moment. Neither ever thought they'd be in such a position, as much as one wanted it and the other dreaded. Contrary to optimistic and enthusiastic beliefs, few could choose their opportunities. Shinobi born into clans had special gifts, those from independent lines had their parents to guide them, and a very lucky small number were born with abilities that could make them the founder of a clan. Even then, they could still fail, whether from poor performance or bad luck. Worst cases were often forgotten in favor of successful ones, as human behavior often demanded. Being too focused on failure held people back from success. Dosu, pondering such things, walked through the hospital, making his way towards his sensei's distinct sounds. A legendary century-old rogue ninja dropping in on your mission just happens. He closed his eye over rolling it. And a Jinchuriki will totally come save your ass if it happens again. Groaning, he held his head up, as if to stare at the ceiling. That was so damn close. How the hell am I still breathing? Yeah. A vaguely familiar voice some ways from him said. How haven't you been executed yet? He opened his eye to a blonde-haired girl, barely noticing his headband. Oh, you. He kept walking towards the stairs. I defected and your village accepted me. She followed after him, face scrunched. Why? I get the feeling I'm going to hear that a lot. You're just some goon. And you're... He turned back to look at her different state of dress. A nurse now? Her looking away, downtrodden, alongside a raised heartbeat made him regret saying anything. They went up the stairs to the floor where a certain someone was choking down lecherous snickering that hurt his stressed lung. Dosu was tempted to tell off the moping girl, but that would have only made things worse. Besides, she seemed way more depressed than his own massacre-witnessing teammates. Something worse may have happened to her, which would perpetuate and grow his bad image among his new comrades if he did. Put the smut away, we have a female guest, he said directly into his ears. It was beneath his pillow when they walked in. Dosu. Surgical mask in place of his ruined one, he turned his eye to the girl and blinked. You joined the medic corps? We couldn't find a good substitute for Choji, Kakashi-sensei. She frowned. So we agreed to go our separate ways for a bit since we couldn't be a team anymore. He glanced down. Been some time since I've seen Asuma. Focusing back on her, he hummed. And Shikamaru? Umbu. That made him shoot his upper body upright. What? Ino tilted her head. Being cleared for Umbu duty so fast. He relaxed. I know he's brilliant beneath the laziness, but he should have been given more time. Dosu raised a hand. Sorry to interrupt your catching up, but I need training. You know several chakra control exercises you can do on your own. he said, giving him a look. I need a new sound jutsu. He squinted. Basics and fundamentals will get you farther than knowing how to spite fire and shoot lightning. He mimicked in perfect unison with him. Ino gaped. Wait, you replaced Naruto on Team 7? Aren't you SL? Dosa bit his tongue and focused back on his sensei. You know what we've ran into. I need more. Kakashi sighed. You won't be able to do more until you can precisely control your chakra, like Sasuke and Sakura can. If sound is wind and lightning, it's controlled transformation between two different points. He began raising fingers. Bursting eardrums from afar is only the forefront of what you can do with it. The rhythm of the heart, the security of the brain, and even the capillaries in the lung. Wriggling them, he smiled. With the ability to target these vital areas, you can disable or kill anyone. His eye, on the other hand, widened alongside Ino's entire set. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought you were smart enough to figure it out yourself. It opened and he withheld the desire to look at him in disappointment, understanding why Orochimaru didn't put much thought into training him. Oh. Well, this is embarrassing. Shrugging it off, he approached the window by his bedside. I'm going to go better my chakra control now. You best do that. Ino watched him slide it open and hop out. Can he actually do any of what you said he could? Falling limp, he let the hospital bed take him in. Not right now, obviously. There was nothing else driving him but self-preservation, so he doubted him improving to that level anytime soon. Why did you decide on the medic corps? An administration job would have bored me out of my mind, and I'm not sure I could do anything the Umbu has people do. She smiled. It took me a while to learn, but healing ninjutsu is practical, and I can really help people here. He squinted at her. Quick question, why aren't you helping people right now? She blinked innocently. I'm on break. Tilting her head, she hummed at the confusion on his face. Oh yeah. You get those. I should have guessed you've been in the field through your entire career. He shrugged. Administration is boring, as you said. I don't have the knack for healing ninjutsu, and I never felt right just staying in the village. She didn't need to know about his empty home. I deal with enough paperwork on some mission reports. Ino giggled in understanding. Didn't think I'd ever have nightmares about messing up on them. With luck, that's all you'll have to worry about. He briefly regretted his words at the curiosity on her face. Haven't had anyone die on me yet. She turned to the door. I should probably head back before time's up, and they're wondering where I am. He waved her goodbye and frowned beneath his mask when she left. It was the most mature, casual conversation he had with someone from her generation. Usually, their immaturity grated on him, but the idea of them losing it so quickly wasn't pleasant either. All of them were growing up, regardless of pace. Some never would, like his eternal rival running around the village in his mummy state when he should have been resting, but their innocence was almost all gone. A few more days passed for Kakashi to be discharged from the hospital. He pretended to no longer have breathing issues so he could get out before Guy, now bound to his bed and heavily medicated for his far more grievous wounds, could think of anything through his drug-addled haze. 2 of his students were training at their usual spot, the third likely absent from not wanting to measure himself to them in terms of chakra control. Sasuke spotted his new mask first and took him aside. All right, what is it? He looked away, closed his eyes, imagined he was back in his most helpless moments, and opened them. Did you know? No. He squinted at the odd pattern. Inverted colors and straight tomo. I have no idea why it's different than yours or Itachi's. I can instantly move to another position with it though. Do you have to see it or only think about it? Sasuke frowned. I don't think I can afford to test that. He glanced at his surroundings with the Mangekyo. I can see better than the normal Sharingan right now, but my vision with this eye without either is worse. While worrisome, he couldn't deactivate his to better compare. How many times did you teleport? Twice within minutes. His brow furrowed. It was obvious that extending their Mangekyo's longevity would take using them sparingly. After thinking about it for more than 5 seconds as intelligent men should, they immediately realized what a ridiculous notion that was for shinobi, especially ones that constantly got into ridiculous scenarios like them. They were better off improving their other abilities while only using their Mangekyo if it was the one way to survive. Otherwise, both would be half-blind in little time. A bitter, ironic smile spread across his face with a scoff. It's a piece of shit. Yet he once hoped it'd be what he needed. Double-edged sword. Kakashi corrected. That's not H. He stopped himself as he realized who he sounded like. Well, it's not good. His sensei nodded. I'd say it could be worse, but that doesn't help us at all. Freezing, a vital thought came to mind. And it doesn't help your brother. Face scrunching, he shot him a look. Of course it doesn't. The realization made his eyes widen. Oh. He laughed. So his vision might be more damaged than either of ours. You did say he used one on you back then, and he used the same on me when he felt somewhat threatened. He hummed. It's most likely he was wary of my Mangekyo, and used his to neutralize me immediately. I don't see him abusing it either. Kakashi nodded and glanced away for a second. You know, I'll have to inform the Hokage about this. Itachi is an S-class criminal. The last Uchiha inclined his head. I understand. Little sense remained in guarding what would be a clan secret if half of it was hostile. It was a mystery if they'd ever find out how much that applied. Well over a week went by since Orochimaru's headquarters was annihilated and Mori Town was nearly bombed. Kabuto led the others to where he was expected to give his next report, and left immediately after. Yugo, predictably, took being separated from his metaphorical cage the worst, forcing Suigetsu to drown him repeatedly when he lost control of himself. Somehow being the most inconspicuous one despite having red hair, Karen handled resupplying with all the trouble it entailed with the local rogue shinobi faction. It was a few hours after her most recent run and a drowning pacification when two familiar signatures entered her range. She pursed her lips at the change in Naruto's. Why are you the one taking our close call the worst when you knew it was set it up? Shaking her head, she walked out of her room through the central chamber housing a mellow floor-laying Yugo on the way to the exit. He's here. He immediately jumped up. He is? He froze, blinked, began following, and crossed his arms. So he is? I don't know whether that's sad or adorable. Orochimaru, however well he hid it, had disgusting chakra in its relaxed state. It was stronger than most other chakras with a strange quality to it she only ever saw in Yugo, albeit far more stable. None of it was detectable when he wanted it to be so. While Naruto could do the same, he didn't particularly care to at that moment. His swirling maelstrom of death and frustration was even more so than usual. Such a horrible thing would make most sensor ninja physically ill, but long-term exposure gave it an underlying feeling of comfort to her. Hair longer and wilder, Naruto's eyes were downcast, staring at nothing in murderous contempt, until they caught sight of vaguely familiar leggings. Shinobi or city girl? He looked up and blinked, killing impulses giving way to surprise. You're alive? She frowned at his confirmation of Suigetsu's allegation. No thanks to you. She spat. An odd laugh left him. Would you believe me if I told you I thought you could handle it? He looked to the other approaching survivor. Of course you're still breathing. I mean, she made it. He raised an eyebrow at Yugo, crossing his arms and turning his head away with a huff. And what's that supposed to mean? Karen twitched. Your chains are strong, but you're shit at adapting, so one opening is all anyone competent needs. He stepped back as Yugo got closer to repeat his gesture, further emphasizing the huff. And self-control has always been your issue in everything. Laughing again, he smiled briefly before his lips returned to a thin line. Suigetsu's one weakness is still lightning. I think you can only really kill him through chakra exhaustion or by making him want to die though. Shaking her head, she turned and started walking. Come on. I'm going to cut your hair. He scoffed. No, you're not. He stopped when her face appeared inches away from his, very much displeased. I almost got blown up because of you, so I get to cut your stupid hair. She stepped forward, making him step back. Got it. The sheer shock kept any reprisals from entering his mind. He just followed behind her, unsure of what to think. It wasn't as if he didn't give her just cause. She'd put up with him up until that moment, and he thought her breaking point would be long ago. Really, he was thankful someone still had the character to yell at him in his face than resent him behind his back. Her chosen room was sparsely decorated. In contrast, her original cell back in the Wave Outpost and part of the Mori Town head's residence were a typical young woman's space. Leaving her things behind was a small sacrifice for her freedom the first time, while a heavy blow to her comfort the second. She at least was able to find scissors and combs for sale in the neighboring village she swiped. Do you even know how to cut hair? Back in the village, we had experts for that. He watched her snatch her tools with her chains through the mirror he sat in front of. I've been cutting my hair for most of my life. She scoffed, dragging the comb through his blonde. Great, you have mats. What? Being tugged by his roots made him twitch. Hey! The audible snap came with their release. Oh. They stayed in that position in silence for minutes. Only the clipping of scissors and raking of combs could be heard. Both knew the other had something on their mind, though only one was in the mood to voice it. As odd as they found it, they were kinsmen. Intentionally having them ambushed before leading another ambushing party to them was more than enough to cross lines with a complete stranger. Are you okay? Karen finally asked. He glanced back at her, raising an eyebrow. Yeah. She frowned. You do realize I can sense your chakra, right? Cutting more excess locks, she sighed. You're lying. Oh, right. He hummed as he remembered the brief explanation Orochimaru gave him. And? Do you expect me or anyone else to beg you to think about yourself? Anger and frustration built in her voice. What? Do you just want to lounge around in self-pity? She glared at his confused reflection. Are you just drowning in your own catharsis instead of fixing your problems? He kept the confused look for a few seconds, returned her angry one, looked down, frowned, and shifted his eyes off to the side. I tried, he said, voice soft and weary. Hope maybe I could just forget about all of it, but that's impossible even if I wanted to. Nothing can replace what I've lost, and what I never had to begin with. Sighing, he stared up at the ceiling. I had the one thing I really wanted, but I didn't think I was strong enough to keep it. So I let it go. His eyes widened in realization. I betrayed myself trying to protect myself, again. All the anger and frustration Karen felt in herself faded alongside those in his chakra, giving her the clearest picture of his true self. I didn't think you were the kind of person who'd set us up for an ambush like that. I just didn't tell you about the first, and I have no idea what the hell was going on with those stalkers, he informed. But neither did I. There was neither regret nor guilt in his mind. He did what he had to, and he would need to do far worse. She finished cutting his hair. It was shorter than he would have liked while maintaining its feral look, but he wasn't in the mood to complain. Before he could move out of his chair, she wrapped her arms around him. The warmth and pain springing from his chakra made tears flow down her cheeks. What's the big idea? He scoffed at her sobs. You're the one hurting me, he whispered. From what she could grasp, he rarely, if ever, knew the compassion of others to the point it felt wrong to him even when he wanted them. Put up with it, you stupid asshole. Losing whoever Rika reminded him of made it worse. Just outside the door, Suigetsu and Yugo leaned on opposite sides of the wall. The latter contemplated walking in to join in the moment, while former stared out into nothing. Something Naruto said couldn't stop ringing in his head. He couldn't care less about him, but that one sentiment was buried deep inside him long ago. Unlike him, he forgot, something he never thought he could. Karen opened her eyes. She knew they were outside, as much as she preferred not to know. If she weren't so overcome with sadness, she'd be enraged. What alarmed her was neither. For a moment, cold determination replaced the disgusting sleaze in a signature she'd grown too accustomed to. They were together again, though important lines were crossed. One of them would never leave regardless, another needed a reason, and the last only thought he couldn't. Really, things were good for him until recently. Unfortunately, the past would exist regardless if others wanted it to or not, and it needed resolution, whether from their hands or another. Time, as much as it passed, seemed at a standstill in Onsen City. Shinobi from the hidden steam village came when they heard the news to assist in its rebuilding. Its leader, however unrecognizable, came with them. Compared to the leaf ninja they hired, the Yukage himself, some odd old man, was unimpressive. Guards carrying the Lady Dowager's word of warning regarding possible cultists were ignored, their true leader far beyond caring and incapable of halting their actions regardless. Minoru lazily sat on his throne, head propped up by the hand itself supported by an armrest. Their usual softness was replaced by a rough patch of skin. He assisted with much of the rebuilding effort after the leaf ninja went, and before the steam shinobi came. Despite his aloof presence in his subjects' lives, they came to view him with respect once they saw the bloodstains on his kimono from wiping off his labor-skinned fingers. None of it mattered much anymore. A man dressed in his guard's uniforms walked in, breaking the order he gave to be left alone in his hall since the incident. Seen the light? He took off the balaclava to reveal his familiar undamaged face with a full head of gray hair. I'd come sooner, but Raichi had some umbu who knew the way I worked skulking around. Did you have to kill so many people to get to me? He asked, voice calm. You weren't really the goal. Haydn kept walking and casually rested the well-forged glaive over his own shoulder. No offense. He tilted his head in interest. Then what was it? The bodies and crying children filled his mind. What could be worth all of that death and misery? That's exactly it. He smiled before frowning. The death part, I mean, misery's just the curse of life. What? Maybe I'm asking too much from a blue blood like you, but what you saw wasn't some great calamity or a once-in-a-lifetime tragedy. That's just a Tuesday to us shinobi and the poor bastards who live near the nation borders. He began. Ever since the great village coalitions of clans started, there's been one great war every generation. Before that, it was just constant war, not that it would ever reach your kind though. A bloodthirsty grin spread across his face. But we went from openly butchering each other to killing unfortunate children instead of sleazy homewreckers and general wastes of space in the name of stability. Kunoichi became more prominent, so rapes went up. Clanless orphans are almost the majority of the active shinobi in every village now. Sophisticated military structure means torture is a given and not a risk during capture. War crimes are an oxymoron. We put immeasurably powerful abominations into children to turn them into weapons. And worst of all, we think most of this shit isn't just necessary. His glee died. It's good. Minoru's face scrunched. You killed all those people for a return to the warring states period? I wish that was possible, but I did this to stop something even worse from happening. This land deciding that being everyone's bitch will somehow be better. He sighed at his still confused company. Living in a peace determined by others isn't prosperity. It's just prolonged suffering. That's everything in general, really, but at least when you died in the old days there was less of it. Get what I mean? His expression turned neutral out of sheer disbelief. This was you saving us. The man before him, complete delusional yet somehow lucid, couldn't be real. Save is a strong word, more like helping, but you're on the right track. The strength in his hand left him, making his head smack against the armrest. You can kill me now. Shrugging, Haydn lifted the glaive, swung, and stopped the blade right at his unmoving neck. Huh? He brought his borrowed weapon back to his shoulder. I don't think I will. He straightened up, staring the man legendary in Umbu circles dead in the eye where almost everyone would falter. You! He scoffed. You're going to just walk away after all of this? A nod alongside a hum nearly made him twitch. Before all this, you were just some pussy who'd live and die like the rest of the pathetic puppets. He smiled almost proudly. Look at you, you get it. A groan of disbelief and frustration left him. Get what? He glared. Just kill me. But you still think misery needs to have some type of meaning with what you're asking. He frowned at the look on his face. Sorry, kid. Turning around, he began walking. Doesn't work like that. Shit just happens, whether you're a shinobi or a powerless civilian. But if anyone causes things to happen, it's shinobi. He raised a hand in farewell. So long, and may you carry out Jashin's will. He stared at his retreating back and then at nothing for minutes before returning to his lazy position, contemplating what he'd been told. Without a doubt, the man was absolutely out of his mind, likely driven insane by the uncertainty of life and having found comfort in the one certainty. Although the worst thing was he could see a point in his madness, the current centralization of power ironically let atrocities like his happen in the first place. It was impossible for anyone without any power to change anything. Like everyone kept reminding him as of late, he was merely a puppet to placate the rabble. Shinobi. The villages. He scowled. This entire system. A rogue pillar of it was under his roof eating his food a short while ago, and such a golden opportunity slipped from his grasp. Passion he never had burned within his chest. Something needed to change, and he couldn't go back to living the way he was. If the best he could be was a politician, he needed someone who could play the soldier, preferably someone who shared the same beliefs as him. He needed to find rogue shinobi who weren't completely mad to partner with, and then work from there. From his view, it was near impossible. Outside the reach of the 5 great nations were a number of squabbling minor lands. They were home to independent shinobi, and the most desperate of rogues who couldn't reach the land of rice or those looking to give up the life entirely. Every so often, independent ninja left them in attempts to make names for themselves, which rarely turned out well. Rarer still were shinobi from the great nations that kept their patriotism. In an isolated hut within the land of demons, a woman with long hair scribbled ink into a scroll with precision before her door opened. Oh please! She turned to a gray-haired man trapped between spears of earth. Did why? She frowned. Kazuma. Fuin. He greeted, unbothered by his conditions. By the priestess, learn to knock. Freeing him, she returned to her work. I'd have to scrub your blood out of my walls if I killed you. He smiled. I'm afraid I was too excited. What happened? The capital of the Land of Steam was attacked with the daimyo being the target, and the Land of Rice is in chaos from its own being a gibbering oaf. His smile widened. She raised an eyebrow at her scroll. And? She furrowed her brow when he leaned his head into her view. Change is in the air, can't you feel it? He backed out of her space and raised his arms. Chaos has come again to the great nations and there will soon be war. That's of little concern to me. Kazuma nodded. Oh yes. A glint in his eye would have told her more than needed. And what if I told you I know of a way to destroy one, several really? She stopped and turned to him. This is… She blinked. You're serious? She gave a small laugh. How then? I'd give specifics, but you wouldn't believe me unless you saw it with your own eyes. He sighed, already full of nostalgia. First, there are a few others we need to gather. Getting what we need will be the only hard part. Don't tell me you're thinking of taking over a village with ragtag shinobi. My only interest is in their destruction. He turned and walked towards the door. You'll see. He stopped right by her door. That is, if you are coming along. Fuin pursed her lips at the thought. She cared little for the politics of the greater nations that occasionally bled into the countryside, but it was a chance to really make a name for herself. Money was considerably less valuable to an independent shinobi compared to status, which was good and bad. Her entire life was spent in the countryside, and it would be good to see the sights before they all went away. I'll do it. Splendid. He opened it, walked out, and sighed. It is well about time I saw my son. She wrapped her scroll and followed. What? There was much for them to do in so little time. Chapter 68. Looming Shadows. A great amount of training went into producing specialized Umbu operatives. Stealth was an absolute must, information gathering as well, tracking less so yet was still important, and leaving as little trace of themselves as possible. Most jonin were capable of those as well as more, but that made them far more valuable as a public example of a village's power than a faceless tool. Not every jonin could stomach the worst of what the Umbu had to do too. Unfortunately, that meant what was often viewed as the best performed the worst against expectations. Haydn was on the road by the time his old compatriots found the body of the man he replaced. A hummed hymn to his lord was all that could be heard. The satisfaction of a job well done lulled him into closing his eyes for a second. Jumping back, he opened them to a walking patchwork of skin and limbs and rags. We had a deal, Kakuza said, staring at him with a blank blue eye contrasting a brown one. Right. Even if he wanted to break his word, he couldn't fight him. Follow me. The ancient ninja waited until he was a certain distance away to trail him. He could just from the way he walked what type of combatant he was. Even if he appeared to have no method to kill him, he would minimize every possible advantage he could have. After being forced back for the first time in years, he was in no mood to take risks, though he was still looking for something to take his anger out on. It was more than a dozen miles away from the city in the middle of one of the steam's many snow-covered forests. A stump was hidden beneath the snow. Haydn swept it all aside and lifted a fur crammed in to protect a scroll. Pulling it out, he unfurled it and sliced open a finger on his borrowed glaive. Splattering the fresh red over the seal unlocked its contents. Stay right there and release. He watched him follow his command, conjuring forth multiple suitcases. Open them. A sigh nearly made him eviscerate the man before he followed through to reveal the money. I'll count it. Are you serious? He stepped back as the thread tendrils emerged from his body, rising up to stop snow from falling over the paper bills. Experience with manual tasks typically lead to doing them faster. The difference between a month of experience and a year was the distance between a tree and sapling. A month compared to decades was astronomically higher. Like a machine made for the express purpose of counting money, Kakuza flipped through each stack within 2 minutes before they could freeze. 432,539. Well, if that will be a tendril extended hand on Haydn's shoulder stopped him from moving. My boss would like a word, and that is not a request. You have a boss? The hand tightening made him sigh. All right. He was tempted to slice it off before it went back to him, but he knew it would be a waste of time. Not like I have a choice. And that was how their hate-filled partnership began. The nearest settlement to the Orochimaru hideout they currently dwelled in was called Akiji Village. It was a motley place thanks to its proximity to various borders and being on one route to the land of Rice's capital. Someone could find a variety of food vendors, craftsmen, gambling spots, and traveling merchants. Despite being smaller than their last place, it was easier to get lost in. Suigetsu appreciated it. After casually killing what was supposedly the local rogue ninja's strongest guy, he was left alone to wander. There was a girl intrigued by his exotic look to replace the one he left behind in Mori Town. Interesting swords he'd never seen before in the marketplace stopped him. Where did you come here from? A local customer asked a nearby merchant. The land of steam. The man sighed. Someone really did bomb Onsen City to hell. They're still rebuilding, so I couldn't sell there. His expression worsened. Before that, I tried selling in the hidden mist only to get robbed by the Kurasuki family on the ship ride. Gaze stealing, Suigetsu stepped towards them. Kurasuki? His eyes would have murdered the man on accident if they could. Raiga Kurasuki? Why yes, sir. He choked out. He stood there for a minute, contemplating that name and unintentionally scaring the life out of everyone nearby, before turning to walk back to the hideout. The trees of the surrounding forest blurred at the edges of his vision. Nothing was in the focus of his sight. All he could see was a path that didn't exist in the real world, one that told him he couldn't go back. Burying it wouldn't work again. Are you going to betray me? There was no one behind him. He recognized the voice, even if he hadn't heard it for so long. Someone could mimic it, but the inflection was too perfect. Either that or he didn't remember him as well as he should have. With how he'd been acting, that wasn't out of the question. Are you going to turn your back on everything we sacrificed one more time? Being tortured by Orochimaru wasn't such a horrible experience. He couldn't think with his mind scrambled. Everything plaguing him before, like a stone in water, sunk to the absolute depths of his thoughts when it was over. New company and places gave him things to distract himself with. For once in his entire life, he thought he could live out his days peacefully. Wake up from your dream. That's wrong. He finally spoke. I'm falling back asleep. Turning his back on the base, he walked towards the road past the forest leading to the southeast. His mind was clear. There was nothing else worth devoting himself to, and he didn't care to try finding it. Nothing could stop him, not even regret if he had any left. Although he had to when three familiar faces dropped down from the branches above to get in his way. Where do you think you're going? Naruto asked, somewhat irritated. None of your business. Suigetsu deadpanned. Move. He twitched and stomped forward. Who do you think you're talking to? Unfazed, he stared for a solid beat before smiling. I think you're a good person. He wasn't lying. What? I think you're a good person who tried to do what he thought was right, but it didn't work out at all because sometimes life is just a bitch that way. His smile grew and twisted into a frown. And when you found out, it broke you. Everything you did was pointless. So you left your village to make everyone pay for it, except you're not that kind of guy at all. There was no emotion in his eyes. When this is all over and you've gotten what you think you wanted, there will be nothing left for you. It might take days or even years, but you'll realize the truth and kill yourself. He walked past his frozen acquaintance and baffled ones onto the road. Go fuck yourself, Naruto. They stood in complete silence. It wasn't just because they could see truth in his words, but the brazen attitude he kept in reserve for everyone, save Orochimaru and the man he told off. He hadn't complained about the bombing at all. Out of everyone, he took it the best really. Karen was the only one that could see something was plaguing him since he overheard their conversation, and she informed them that it seemed like he was leaving. Getting a grip on himself, Naruto walked after him, calm yet still somewhat irritated. The others, not sure what to do with themselves, followed him in turn. If Orochimaru had an issue with that, he could inform them himself or take it up with him. None felt like they'd be back anytime soon, if the hideout would still even be there. Kabuto would not have a single good thing to say to any of them when they'd meet again though. Suigetsu could hear their movements behind him and thought nothing of it. Whether they resented him or not didn't matter, he needed resolution. He didn't care if it killed him or anyone else. There was something he once believed in and needed to see if he still did. Everything else could go to hell as far as he cared. This path could lead to it, and he would still be at peace. All four were shinobi, though it would be hard to recognize them as such. Violence and shadows, however they may dislike them, were their existence. Without conviction or morals, many ninja went astray, but they could just as easily fall because of them. Few retired and even fewer found fulfillment in the lifestyle. The latter were either fervent patriots, extreme egoists, or the deranged, and their individual status as one of the three was debatable. The Land of Fire was without a doubt the most prosperous of the 5 great nations. Rich soil, abundant sources of water, and freedom from natural disasters made it a fantastic place to live. Unfortunately, it was between all the others. At the very least, shinobi from the Hidden Leaf were on average above them, which did wonders for its defense. Leaf Anbu were similar and, unknown to most, greater in number. Kuriha was a leaf border town between the Land of Fire and the Land of Wind. A particular ice cream shop was a front for an agent outpost. Manning the counter was Shikamaru in cities, trying to do his best from falling asleep. Sayuri, a young girl a little older than him also assigned to the outpost, swept the floor. Due to the alliance, it was a low-priority position that still needed upkeep lest anyone get suspicious, so they, not being important or experienced, were assigned. "Break time!" Sayuri cheerfully announced, letting her broom thump against the floor. He slid over the countertop and yawned. "Here I was just getting used to doing nothing. You decided to take the job. And I'm regretting it." He opened the door and walked out. She followed, locking and closing it behind her. "You didn't flunk out." Her foot stomped. "Could have done better than this. Office work is just as boring, and I have no talent for medicine." He scoffed. This place had the worst interview ever. "Tell me about it." She caught up to his side and fidgeted with her fingers, forming words with a specially developed sign language to use expressly around civilians since shinobi would take notice. "Did they ask you if you torture children too?" Yawning, he stretched his hands behind his back and did the same kind of. She resisted the urge to scrunch her face. "What do you mean?" Looking away as if feigning distraction, she did more signs. "They ask you if you do things to little girls in a hypothetical hostage intimidation scenario?" She glanced back for a response to find him staring straight ahead. "They abducted him off the street after he expressed interest to a recruiting officer. Hooded and strapped to a chair, they asked him a series of questions. If he'd torture, should it advance the village's interests, implicate an innocent of high treason to cover their tracks, kill a member of his clan expressing dissent to preserve order, kill a close friend to protect important secrets they knew, seduce an enemy of either sex, violate a member of either sex, consume his own waste to survive, and consume human remains to survive." At the very least, that's what he could recall, riding high off his own natural adrenaline if they didn't drug him themselves. From then on, it was orientation and training. Some higher officer assigned him to his post after. Walking ahead of him, she fidgeted behind her back, faking an itch scratch. "I answered yes to everything but the eating waste to survive one." He walked to her side as his eyes couldn't suppress their urge to widen. "You fucking scare me," he whispered. She nearly slapped him upside the head for breaking the rules before she noticed no one was within hearing distance of even casual conversation then. Failing the team test was the biggest embarrassment of my entire life. Biting her lip, she stopped herself from displaying any more of her real feelings. "I am not going back to the academy." "Then I guess you should open up to the idea of starting your own franchise." The bustling plaza they used to scout for any new foreign ninja was ahead. "Everything to human flesh but no waste" would be a good slogan. "You cheeky dick." Sayuri giggled, genuinely amused. Already having debated what to eat hours beforehand, they bought udon from a well-known local spot. Their seats were the same as always, a table in the center of the plaza where 2 people could sit and observe everything happening behind the other. Several minutes passed by with little note. Then Shikamaru saw them, a gray-haired man, a classy-looking woman with long hair, a walking brick of a man, and a beautiful long-haired woman wearing straw hats that helped conceal their faces. 7 o'clock. 4. Body language screamed shinobi, man in 40s, woman in late 20s/early 30s, man in 30s, and woman in mid-20s. He kept staring straight at his partner, observing their out-of-focus forms in the rim of his vision. No headbands. Not ethnically sand, maybe some leaf or grass for the old man, sure as hell not ethnically mist, not ethnically cloud, and not ethnically stone. Independence? Eyes just as focused on him, she kept slurping. A team of independents? Nodding, he frowned. All jonin? Troublesome. You can't tell that from just looking at them. She stopped eating and furrowed her brow at him. I know, yo. He bit his tongue. I've run into ninja way stronger than them. Lacking the time to explain, he mulled over how to put it. They view us the same way we view small surrounding hazards. Dealing with us is like walking over a bump in the road. It's not that hard, but they can still trip if they don't see it or step on it as a joke. Together, their presence exuded that sentiment, and then some. None of them care about hiding it. Just look, she continued, taking bites out of her meal before they came into her peripheral vision. Definitely independent ninja. She swallowed and scoffed. Either they have a death wish or they are all on the level of a jonin. That works too. Why do you always have to feel like the smartest guy in the room? Sayuri asked, squinting at him. I don't have to, I just am. It didn't help him at all, really. None are censors since we're still breathing. He scoffed. That or they don't view us as threats. If they're as strong as you say, we're not. She finished the rest of her udon and sighed. All we can do is report this. Could be they want us to. She shot him a look. You want to follow after them then? With a sigh, she shook her head. We'd die or get kicked out for disobeying orders. He gave her one in turn. The academy wasn't this bad. The look of despair on her face reminded him of someone he really didn't want to remember being classmates with. How do you think you landed this assignment anyway? A rough idea was in his head, but he needed more info. Inexperience as a normal ninja. I made chunin in my first year, and I still got this place. He downed the rest of his bowl in one prolonged gulp. You likely gave the wrong answers and wrong impression during your interrogation. A look of genuine dismay adorned her face. But I said yes to almost everything and meant it. That's not good. He resisted the urge to distance himself from her. A shinobi without morals, even if they're umbu, is just a rogue waiting to happen. There was a drastic difference between reluctantly doing horrible things and just doing them. She parted her lips to protest, closed them, and twitched. Then why are you here, genius? His record was already better than most shinobi from what he told her. Because they're not sure if I'm serious about this, or I'm really cut out for it, especially right after I lost my best friend. Shikamura looked off to the side. Way to make me feel like a bitch. Troublesome. He sighed. Have you tried not being one? Dick. She tilted her head, sight of the foreign group long gone. They took the mountain road, so they're not planning on going anywhere major. Humming, she pondered their goal and destination. Know any places on the outskirts of the country a ninja would be interested in? He stroked his chin. Gambling-oriented border settlements. Old man is visiting home in the land of grass, going the long way avoiding leaf ninja to offer services to the land of steam daimyo, or heading to the land of rice with the rogue shinobi lords fighting over it again. Laughing at a sudden thought, he dismissed it with a shake of his head. Or maybe seeing if they can get admitted into the fire temple. What the hell do they do there anyway? They have this special training regiment they have to devote their entire life to. He nodded at her scrunched face. It lets them change their chakra into a special one no other shinobi can, but it's not that effective on the battlefield. And they live there for the rest of their lives? Not in some cases, he said, remembering Asuma's stories. Their spying break soon came to an end, and they went back as heralds of another misfortune. For a month and almost half of one, Hinata lived in Naruto's apartment under the watch of a censor-type umbu agent. She could see him whenever she was training or activating her Byakugan to scan her surroundings. It was actually less intrusive than living in the Hyuga compound where anyone that could use chakra may activate their own all-seeing eyes at any time. Though she was lonely, it was better than being around her family that made her feel alone, even if they would die for her if need be. A part of her wanted to invite him in for a meal out of sheer boredom, but she thought it improper of a taken woman and a violation of Naruto's privacy. She was in the market shopping for groceries when she ran across a familiar face. There were bags under Anko's eyes and a frown forming from her lips because she couldn't decide between two different brands of coffee. Having avoided anywhere near her to stave off suspicion for so long, she ended up throwing herself into her embrace. Blood surging to her head turned her face crimson, but she couldn't help it. Anko, having managed to notice and catch her, laughed. Hey! She set her blushing form down and ignored the odd looks they received thanks to the commotion. What's up? Her head was in a daze, as if she was trying to confess all over again. See, come back with me for dinner? She raised a curious eyebrow at her yearning face before nodding. Why not? The agent observed from afar, squinting at a brief shift in Hinata's chakra that immediately vanished. It was too short to get a proper feeling, but he'd seen the like before in people with extreme phobias and traumas, only they would fall into matching emotional reactions. She was happy and felt in good company. Anko felt the same, but it, in contrast, was much more controlled. Both were trailed by a signature he vaguely recognized. "These are from the previous tenant, right?" Anko asked, observing the marks over the interior. This is Naruto's apartment." She shared the glum look on her face. "I wish I tried making friends with him back during our academy days. A young clan heir friends with a feral delinquent." She smiled at the image in her head. It turned upside down. "I don't think your father would have allowed it. Neither would Danzo have a ninja with that much political power holding sway over him, child or no." Nodding, she walked into the kitchen and set down her grocery bags. "But Naruto would have fought him over me." Anko, bursting into laughter, joined her. "He would have, wouldn't he?" A sly grin spread across her face. "You like the idea of him beating up your dad for you, don't you?" Her blush confirmed it. "I wouldn't hide behind him if I really wanted that." She brought a pan out of a cupboard and set it on the cooking stove. "It's just improper of me to raise my hands against my own father." Her face scrunched for just a moment. "I keep forgetting you really are a princess." Giggling, Hinata took out her fresh ingredients, not sure at all what to say to that. It was a term of endearment for something she never saw as a good thing. Losing her status as clan heir still made it painful, reminding her of one of her many great failures. Then again, so many things about Anko and Naruto pained her even when they made her happy. Permanent reminders would always exist in her lonesomeness, choice of residence, and occupation. A dozen or so minutes later, Anko was staring down a tower made of savory-style dumplings. I appreciate your hard work, but I'm not that hungry." "Oh." She slid a greasy spatula underneath half of the edible construct and moved it onto her plate. "I just made a little extra because I've been feeling rather peckish lately." She gave a small laugh as she put a normal number on her own before realizing her student wasn't joking. "A little?" Her confusion only grew thanks to her casual nod. "Our cooks were always exhausted from having to make all our food, so I started making my own when I was young to give them less work." She broke a fresh pair of chopsticks, grabbed a dumpling between them, and threw it into her mouth. "It seemed to really help." Munching, she smiled. "Kurenai said I cook and eat too much, but I never understood why." Her lips made a frown at utterance of her former sensei's name. "Huh?" Her eyes glanced down at the subtle curve in her casual baggy sweater. "Explains those, I guess." She slid a dumpling in her mouth and hummed. "These are actually good." A look of pure joy replaced her sorrow. "I'm so glad you like them." It was the happiest she'd been in far too long. They sat across from each other, enjoying their company as they ate. Food, clothes, and life were mostly their topics of conversation. Both were avoiding others they knew for obvious reasons, so it went on, however mundane. Soon, they sat in complete silence with empty plates. Minutes passed of them simply taking in the moment before one's welcome felt abused rather than. "I should go," Anko spoke, breaking the silence as she moved to stand up. Hinata rose first, seat audibly screeching. "Please don't." Her blank eyes, welling with fearful tears, widened. "Hey," she called out softly. "It's all right. I'm not going anywhere if you don't want me to, and I'm not mad." Having reassured her, she stood up slowly. "Come here." She was forced somewhat back thanks to her throwing herself into her arms again. There. Caressing her lower back, she shushed her. I. Positioning one of her arms behind her thighs, she lifted her up. "It's all right." She carried her into the living room, and finding no couch to lay on, went to the bedroom so she could fall back first onto the mattress. "Let it all out." The agent watched her comfort his assignment for well over an hour. He wasn't sure what to make of it, but her breakdown was to be expected. Her chakra was sullen for almost the entire time he watched her. As far as he knew, she was still marked for death due to her abetting their Jinchuriki's defection. Everything else about her personal life was a mystery since she hadn't engaged anyone informally at all under his watch, so he was questioning why the earlier familiar signature was stalking. Anko left the apartment and walked down a nearby road, the stray chakra following along. Concerned and unable to leave his assignment, he created a shadow clone to observe. She stopped at a restaurant to Suma Sarutobi, and another shinobi he couldn't name the signature of where. The familiar one went inside after a few minutes and sat next to her on what seemed to be an elevated stool from the small lift of it. "Funny to see you here, Kakashi," she greeted all too cheerfully. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you've been spying on me. Wiggling her brows, she grinned. Hoping to see me naked? You gave me pictures. Did I? She tilted her head, lips thinning into a line. Now why would I do that? He glanced at her from the corner of his eye. Same question I have about you dropping in on Hinata Hyuga after being gone for 2 months. His tone was accusing. So impatient. She smirked. Going to the edge and staying there is better than going straight to the climax, you know? For a moment, the girl that groped him as she tried to gouge out his Sharingan returned. I guess you really couldn't help yourself with Rin. Her smirk morphed into a grin at his hand grabbing her throat. A face familiar to both was behind him the next second, the point of a kunai at the back of his neck. Hands off her, she hissed, ring-red eyes burning a hole in the back of his head. Now! Cheeks a rosy pink after he let go, Anko nearly swooned. Kurenai, she called out dreamily. Asuma was too focused on his snapping coworker to acknowledge the odd greeting. What's gotten into you, Kakashi? Knowing nothing he could say would sufficiently explain the situation nor justify his outburst, he rose from the stool and walked past them toward the door, beset by the worried looks of civilians. It's nothing. Walking out, he saw the signs of an observing Umbu agent, and realized none of what occurred since he decided to check up on her again was a coincidence. What the hell are you doing, Anko? The woman in question sighed. Some guys just can't take being teased. She pouted at Kurenai's typical look. He's been under a lot of stress lately. Asuma shook his head. We all have, but he shouldn't be like that even if you provoke him. He looked at her. Are you alright? Yeah, thanks. Ape-looking Shithil. She smiled at him and his twitching girlfriend. Oh. He gave a small laugh. He got that from you. Huh. Kurenai turned to the door. Let's go murder somewhere else. Why do you keep saying that? He went after her. It's a word. Sounds like those ridiculous futuristic dystopian novels trying to make up slang. Still sitting at the bar counter, Anko ignored the bartender and the worried-looking civilians. Kakashi had just committed battery in front of a dozen normal people, 2 of his colleagues, and under the watch of an Umbu agent. He could burn the pictures he had of her, but it would make no difference. Their private little game of hide-and-seek was at an end. Of course, he had to know something deeper than he originally thought was going on, not that it mattered. She got off, stretched, and walked out of the door with a smile on her face. Keeping her chakra focused to not let any of her twisted feelings about Hinata seep out was stressful, especially after the month she hadn't seen her. Like a good pet, she'd been waiting and needed reassurance she wasn't forgotten. It made her think about her runaway mate and his all-too-feral state. He was bound to do something drastic soon that'd attract attention. The land of rice was back to its state before Orochimaru, so something major was going to happen regardless, hopefully bringing them together again. When she got home, she went straight to her room and collapsed onto her bed. The usual stillness and silence was even greater than before, a consequence of meeting 2 of her amusements back to back. She tried to bury the feelings. Keyword being tried. Bringing her fingers together, she conjured a clone that immediately embraced her. What you're doing is wrong. And when has doing the right thing ever worked out? She asked herself. Come on. Tell me. It looked up, pondering, and frowned. When the old man took us back in, that? Her vision blurred. I was just trying to make myself useful to Orochimaru. Her voice broke. Stupid idiot. She didn't know whether she meant Sarutobi or herself. She was used to the overall hopelessness mixed in with loneliness. Only some days were harder than others, whether for one reason or another. There was no doubt in her mind much of the blame fell onto herself for not being strong enough and not wanting to be a good enough person to passively change them either. Indulging in her debased behaviors brought far too much satisfaction, while trying to better herself was hard, especially when other people were in the mix. At the very least, she once tried. Chapter 69, Deals Between Devils. Tracking down someone who managed to evade the most skilled trackers in every village was, predictably, extremely difficult. Even those who knew him best would have a hard time finding his bases. At the very least, he was given an easy one with the most obvious personalized secret hideout he'd ever seen. It gave tracks back into the land of fire to the land of waves. What took a while to figure out was the next being an abandoned lighthouse far off the coast. Jiraiya covered his nose as he examined the rotting bodies left behind. He was expecting to find such disgusting sights in the last one, but found only a burnt crater surrounded with traces of glass, indicating a great explosion of some kind. Needless to say, he was too late. Orochimaru took shelter in the land he pacified months ago. The thing he was more concerned for was what he was doing with Naruto in the two hideouts. He walked out and leaned on the entrance wall, contemplating recent news. The Rice daimyo lost control over the shinobi lords he only reigned in because Orochimaru cooperated with him. It was why he expected to find him outside of the land of Rice, but that didn't work out. Either the two had a falling out or something happened to make Akio illegitimate under the eyes of the ninja. As much as he wanted to, there was a good chance he'd spark an international incident from going to check in person without a clear hideout in mind. Going into the other great nations will do more or less the same. Sighing, he walked towards the water. Land of grass, then. Or maybe even the land of wind with our alliance. He tilted his head in thought. Maybe past the land of wind to the land of demons? It was a strange, ancient place where no one would look for him. And not his style at all, which might make it the perfect place to hide. It might be that he returned to the land of sea where so many of his odd one-off experiment projects were, but they raided what had to be every base off of Anko's information. He could see a few bases in the land of hills where the village hidden in the waterfalls was. Trouble was he needed more than his own thoughts on Orochimaru to go off on. Everything happening had to open an opportunity somewhere. Punching his own hand, he saw one. Back to the land of steam. If he couldn't use one daimyo in a precarious position, there was no harm in taking advantage of another, regardless of his land's hidden village. Something else felt amiss. Too much was happening, and however his old teammate liked indulging in danger, moving shop wasn't like him. At the same time, he didn't seem to have much of a choice with no legitimate foolproof heir to go from Tadanaga. He would see for himself. It took barely a half hour to cross from the land of rice into the land of steam. When Sujetsu stopped to rest, so did his unwanted tagalongs. They hadn't said a word since he gave them his honest assessment of Naruto as a person. Even the day after, they kept going along, the silence between them only growing. None of them were the ones that broke it. 24 shinobi surrounded them in the forest, vapor forehead protectors signifying their loyalty. As stern as those who stepped forward looked, many wavered. Due to recent events, the censor ninja that informed their colleagues were bravely patriotic, even if it was foolish. Yet another potential tragedy so soon would destroy what was left of their reputation. Hua! The steam jonin stared as they kept going onward, sparing their collective existences not so much as a glance. Another twitched. Hey! Calm down. A third commanded. Let's not jump to hostilities. He glared at the back of their heads. You heard what our censor said. Even if they seemed beyond them as far as chakra went, they could still win with tactics. What else are they here for? I agree. Yet another went through several hand seals and slammed them down, erecting a mud wall from far beneath the snow in front of their group. All four stopped, shared looks between themselves, and tilted their heads. Killing them would be easy, and sparing them invited other troubles. One didn't want to, 3 didn't care, and 2 were curious as to who was going to handle it. They were just about to raise their hands to play for it when the steam ninja reached their own majority, aiming to take out the most unassuming signature first. Kunai and Shuriken went for his vitals and veered around him back into theirs at far greater force. He burst into laughter, neither sinister nor malicious. It was genuinely amusing. Pure unadulterated irony. Man! Naruto walked past his group towards them. That's funny. He held up a hand just as one of the jonin flickered at him, and a good deal of his insides blew out his back, painting the snow red, before he could slash his throat with a blade. E-explosion style! One of the chunin yelled while going through hand signs. You chose me because I seemed like the weakest one, right? He asked, ignoring the other bad guests and spikes of earth that erupted to skewer him, turning to mud before they could. Even if you didn't, it's still pretty funny. He ran behind a tree inhabited by a steam ninja out of the way of a fireball and channeled lightning chakra through it, electrocuting him through the snow, seeping water through the otherwise insulating material, strong enough to make the entire thing burst into flames. Just look! Genjutsu he was put under was dispelled by Kurama before he was even aware of them. I'm the absolute worst you could have picked. Karen and Yugo shook their heads at their supposed leader running circles, figuratively and literally, around them, showing off his ridiculous application of chakra control and elemental transformation. Sujetsu couldn't help but feel annoyed at last. He wanted to see what would happen out of boredom and curiosity, but he was taking too long. It all could have ended the moment it started. From what he could see and rightfully deduced was Naruto just wanted to feel better about himself. Even if he would feel empty when it was over. A few of the censors and half the other shinobi either ran off or died. Only one of the jonin remained. Naruto had a chunin encased in earth up to his neck and was spouting water made of chakra from his palm into his face, letting the cold finish the trapping with ice. Hands no longer bandaged, he blew flames over them to prevent frostbite. That gave a much-needed opportunity. Falling to his hands and knees before him, the highest-ranking ninja among them put his protected forehead against the snow. I beg you for your forgiveness and ask that you spare the lives of my comrades. Huh! Naruto blinked, utterly mystified. I just killed like half of them. He tilted his head. Aren't you going to tell me to go fuck myself and go down fighting? For the first time, he felt sorry for someone he didn't know. Did I hit you in the head too hard or not hard enough? I didn't mean it. Let me Jew. He's fine, you jackass. Karen yelled, eye twitching at his audacity. She conjured her chains to restrain him before she noticed another shift in Sujetsu's chakra. What the hell are you doing? He asked the ninja, approaching his sorry form. Where is your pride as a man? He grit his pointed teeth. As a shinobi of your village. He looked up in confusion. We can't win. Not against just one of you. Besides, we're the aggressors here. And what of it? Suijetsu's hands balled into fists. Did you get through your entire life by dropping to your hands and knees every time you stepped over someone? What did you expect to happen? I don't know what you want me to say. He relaxed, groaning in disgust. Of course you don't. Your village lost the right to call you worker drones ninja ages ago. He stepped to the left, and another him stepped out from his body to the right. Someone should have killed you all then. Why? Tendrils of water emerged from the strange clone, grabbed him, and dragged his body towards its increasingly less human form. The other shinobi moved to run but were snatched by far quicker aquatic limbs. Each was forced, crying and screaming, into a sphere of water. None could move their hands to make jutsu, and streaming lightning chakra would have shocked them all. Water around their heads lowered below their necks, giving them space to breathe. An overly large sword cleaved their heads off with a single strike before they could take one. Blood shot out of their neck stumps, steaming in the cold air. It splattered over Suijetsu and swerved around Naruto onto the ground. The living blob surged back to the former, and rejoined his body mass. Karen flinched at the bodies sinking into the snow while the rest were looking back in the direction they were headed. Okay, what's going on, Suijetsu? She asked. He rolled his eyes and put the executioner's blade behind back. Stick to playing therapist for the show-off. He took lead once more. You're just like those dead idiots. She shot him a look. What are you even talking about? Naruto followed after him next to a sighing Yugo. He's not wrong. He caught a chain whipping out of her to strike his face. Seriously, was this how everyone in our clan acted? Explain, if you understand so much. He tilted his head, recalling his brief, albeit phenomenal career as a ninja. Well, beyond the patriotic posturing levied on the occupation, there was the underlying brotherhood between comrades and pride in victory and survival, even when missions went awry. Huh. He kept walking, knowing she'd only just tasted what the life was like and not wanting to feel nostalgic. I couldn't explain it to you even if I wanted to. No longer suppressing his signature, she saw his chakra sparkle. Were you really happy? Pain contorted his face for a moment before giving way to a scowl. Until I realized I was surrounded by lies. Even when I left, I didn't realize just how much there were. He didn't want to ever go any deeper, and seeing that woman again would bring him no resolution. She parted her lips to say something when Yugo, pouting, embraced him happily in his best attempt to be reluctant. The warmth and blush on his face made her smile. While Naruto vainly tried to separate from him without hurting him, she focused on the other problem child. It wasn't the first time she saw him insult a ninja for what he saw as shameful displays, but it was the first time he was so passionate, really the first time she ever saw him care about something. The ragtag ambush team's annihilation wouldn't go unnoticed, being made of a few extra roaming patrol squads deployed in the aftermath of the Onsen City bombing. Its runaway survivors would inform the others regardless. Nothing the steam could throw at them would pose a challenge though, but they, as the encounter concluded, would attempt unnecessary resistance anyway. Whatever would happen, in the eyes of almost all the four, would happen. Free of surveillance, Anko could do anything except what she really wanted. It made her regret neutralizing Kakashi so soon. At the very least, she could amuse herself by eluding him until the point of insanity, however unwise that was. Training alone, while necessary, was boring and reminded her of someone she wished dead already. Hana did come by her house some time ago, but she couldn't have an honest talk with her about recent events until she was a jonin, ignoring what she couldn't talk about at all. Anko Midarashi. She jumped from her couch, grinning. It's about damn time. Practically leaping, she closed the distance between her hallway and her room in a second. Her hands were a blur as she created the appropriate mixture to unseal her secret drawer. The same could be said of her entire body when she exchanged clothes. While she transformed to leave, she remembered someone worse than Kakashi could be watching and realized she wouldn't have been contacted by Root if she was in the same instant. The beautiful doll was escorting her to her master in little time at all. Danzo remained stalwart as she arrived. There has been a concerning incident, but Naruto Uzumaki may not be involved. Then why the hell did you call me? She twitched. Because one of the 12 guardian ninjas' remains were robbed. Why the he? Freezing, she remembered. Limelight. He nodded. Orochimaru may be acting without his assistance, if this truly is Orochimaru. He wouldn't need Naruto for this. Her brow furrowed beneath her mask. If he were going to use limelight on the village, he would have already done it. She groaned. But he's the only one outside the land of fire that knows about it. Are you sure this isn't Kakuza or some trophy hunter? Reports from the fire monks say they were beset by powerful shinobi from all across the lands. That sounds like Orochimaru, but it can't be. Even if we pissed him off enough for him to try using it, he'd need way more than that to keep the other villagers from banding together out of concern to stop him. Which is why I have my doubts. His visible eye was more dour than usual. Matters like these are not coincidences. Someone made a mistake. Anko side-eyed him before blinking. Ape-looking Shithil. I assume you mean Asuma Sarutobi. He looked down. Or perhaps the current daimyo has forgotten his place after all these years. Her scoffing brought his gaze back up. After that trash fire of a coup? She shook her head. He couldn't stop his own men from killing each other over something he didn't even want. Then I will have him watched. You, having the most experience out of anyone, will go to the fire temple with my agents. What about Hinata? Hinata Hyuga, Sai, and Toryun Aburame are already under suspicion. Should Hinata disappear with the same squad, you and I will be blamed. You've both proven capable, and I am certain you can handle this on your lonesome alongside my agents. She thought about it for a moment and grinned. Well, I want her with me, and you're going to make it happen. Am I? Danzo's tone was almost threatening. You got blowjob slug princess to let us operate against the daimyo under her direct authority. You can, at the very least, make her glorified parole officer think she's under his watch. She gave a hearty laugh. The Yamanaka you had talk in my mind can do it. You do know what will happen if such tampering is discovered, yes? She nodded. If he's good enough to be your message boy, he's good enough to alter memories and make fake ones. A thought made her pout. Or did you already do that and make the mistake of having him go into her cute little head? I do not take unnecessary risks, and I did not expect you to be able to implant mind traps. He nearly hummed, having honestly considered the former. I can't. Anko licked her lips as she narrowed her eyes. She just knows who she belongs to. Ominous. His hand gripped his cane harder. I will not hear any more of Hinata Hyuga at this time. The scowl on her face beneath the mask was visible in his imagination. We have our duty to the village to fulfill. Her anger flared for a moment before fading. Do you want a Hyuga agent or not? She would have smirked at him, perking up ever so slightly if she wasn't compromising. The all-seeing eyes of the Byakugan to spy on absolutely anyone with a proficient owner that will do whatever I, your partner, tells her to. It was needless to say firm rules needed to be set. I stay with her at all times, you let us pick what agents accompany us if we need them. We get called back if you hear news of Naruto or Orochimaru, and I get access to Root's records. That last condition was impossible, but she was willing to test her luck. I cannot freely divulge information of our operations because I do not keep such things. His hand relaxed. I presume you have actions you do not wish her to perform? She nodded. No fucking and no seduction for obvious reasons. Tilting her head from side to side, she weighed another issue she didn't think much of in comparison. I'd say no to her killing and torturing kids, but it's probably better if she gets used to it now than later when she'll be blaming herself for it happening. Neither surprised him, knowing her little love affair with Naruto was their greatest strength against him, and Anko had already brutalized dozens of children assisting with Orochimaru's experimentation. Done. Good. She grinned and turned to his kneeling agent. Hey, baby, how do you feel about playing with me rather than this dirty old man? She lifted her head. Will it assist in accomplishing our mission's objective? You. She hung her own. I can't do this with a living sex doll. Glancing over, she appraised her for the umpteenth time. What a waste. I can be whatever you want me to be. She purred in a far more lively voice. Except I know you're faking it. Focusing back on Danzo, she sighed. Get your Yamanaka on it, and we'll go as soon as Hinata's dressed up. She turned as he nodded before glaring back at him. If you keep quiet about their movements, or try to get into my head to steal control over her, I'll kill you. I know. He deadpanned. Good. She walked back into the darkness, shadows naturally suiting her. I'm glad we understand each other. The deeper the snake crawled beneath the roots, the more the stained flower would adapt. After her breakdown in Anko's arms, Hinata had taken to roaming the village between training in search of things to do. It gave her Ambuteo more work, but she didn't care, viewing him as a nuisance blocking her from more sensei. The Leaf was one of the biggest settlements in the entire world, so she thought she could find something that interested her other than pressing flowers. Someone else she knew was doing the same, trying to forget. Of course, they ran into each other alone going down the same alley shortcut. Sakura froze at the sight of her, blinked, and jumped. Hinata? Yes? She answered, implicitly questioning her reaction. You're outside the Hyuga compound. She scoffed. You're all right. Looking away and fidgeting, she tried ordering her stream of thoughts. I was on a really shitty mission, WH. She stopped herself, realizing it wasn't a good idea to tell her of all people information about that certain someone in their lives. Was there something you wished to tell me, or did you just want to talk? She flinched at her cold tone. It's just. The last time I saw you was after. Trailing off, she stared at the familiar face of a girl she never really knew. It's been a while, you know? I know. Well, you. Her eyes widened, remembering. What was that whole thing with Anko-sensei about? The girl's complete lack of reaction was unnerving. You were supposed to stay in the village. We trained since Anko-sensei was feeling off physically, cried over Naruto, and talked each other down from going after him. Good thing you both did. Sakura gave a sad smile. I wish things were different. Tilting her head fondly at a memory, she giggled. When we were back in the academy, I saw you staring at him so many times, but I thought you just found him weird because he's the exact opposite of a Hyuga. Her lips turned into a frown. How could I not see it? Thinking of the way they all treated him nearly brought tears to her eyes. How could I? He's been hurt by everyone he's ever known. Pride and affection flared in her chest. Except for me. She put her hands over to feel the thump of her heart. I let him know what care, admiration, love, and pleasure from another person was. Her blush at that last bit amused her. She looked away out of embarrassment. I am really happy for you too. Really, she was jealous she had a relationship like that, but she meant what she said. I just don't know what's going to happen now with him being. It changes nothing. Hinata frowned. Her nods were rapid, not wanting to insinuate anything bad. Yeah, but what? She stepped forward, making her step back. Well? Her gaze lingered on her uneasy form before she had a thought. Does Sasuke even look at you, Sakura? An insecurity she hadn't dealt with at all pained her chest. What? Oh, come on. A cruel smile formed on her sweet face. You know what I'm talking about. We're. The moment they had after reporting their recent mission's success came to mind. We've gotten really close just sitting next to each other. Regret and shame seared her entire body at how ridiculous she sounded. With a tilt of her head, her smile widened. Did you kiss? She stepped forward, pressuring her more. Did he make a woman out of you? Her question came as a husky whisper. The once shy quiet girl, only noticeable for her blank eyes, was towering over her increasingly withdrawing form. And she eked out. She strolled to her side and leaned ever so sweetly to ease her lips by her ear. Then he never will. All the cold air surrounding them could never match the icy feeling in her heart. Her old classmate left her there, gratified with having destroyed her pride as a woman. She roamed the village aimlessly after a few minutes. Everything around her was a blur until she saw the absolute worst person she could. His smile at her presence was innocent and warm in the most inconvenient way possible. "Sakura," Sasuke greeted. She turned and ran off again, tears streaming down her cheeks. As much as she didn't want to, she sobbed and cried the entire time. What Hinata said, however spiteful, had some truth. He never looked at her as a woman. They were young, but that only brought into question her personality. It made her feel only worse. Having no context for this outburst, he stood still in utter confusion. Did I do something? Hinata observed it all from a great distance away with her Byakugan. Keeping in her laughter when Sakura was roaming had her shaking, but she couldn't help falling into a fit of sadistic giggling when Sasuke came into the picture. Even if she meant nothing by what she wanted to say about her relationship with Naruto, it felt all too good. Really, she'd been yearning to feel what she did when torturing those two in the land of rice, even if deep down she thought it wrong. She was so absorbed by it she didn't even notice her assigned agent wasn't in her range anymore. Even if someone was aware of her situation, there was no returning her to the person she once was. The same could be said of her love. For better or worse, they changed as people often did, though their feelings were the same. Innocence, for all its blessings, kept children from becoming adults. On the other hand, what they were getting used to wasn't good at all. The presence of Umbu operatives during a meeting with the Hokage was a sign of several things. The shinobi being summoned or discussed was going to die or wish he was, something very important was happening, or the Umbu wanted you to join. Many would run and get caught. It was one of the most protected places in the entire world, though an incident last year brought that into question. Considering the status of the one summoned, he knew what it was. It was impossible for it to be either of the other two. Asuma Sarutobi squeezed the glowing tip of his cigarette out. Lady Hokage. He turned to the kneeling masked man. Brother. Sarutobi. Tsunade sighed and shook her head. One of the 12 guardian ninjas' graves was robbed. Anger flashed on his face. Where is the RESP? He froze and caught what was left of his cigarette after it fell from his mouth. Kitane tu Sito or Nama? Sito. He grit his teeth. Limelight. Scoffing, he grabbed for his cigarettes with his other hand out of habit. Damn it! He crushed the used one. Orochimaru's really going to resort to that failure of a jutsu. Orochimaru wasn't reported among the grave-rubbing ninja. She said, voice grave. Who else could it be? Even he said a mistake could have its uses. He stared at her silent sitting figure before realization struck. Chiriku and I killed everyone who was left, Lady Tsunade. I slit Seiki's throat and cut through Kazuma's lungs and heart. But you didn't dispose of the bodies. He scowled for a moment before sighing. They were my comrades once. Don't you think leaving them to rot was enough? She tilted her head, understanding his sentiment. I can't blame you for that, but other people will, Asuma. Shaking it, she held back the urge to groan. Chiriku says he and the monks are on it, but I doubt they'll be enough. I'm willing to go right now. The hostiles are a group of independent ninja from different lands. She frowned at his questioning look. I'm afraid I can't send you because of how close you are. I'll take all the blame. His gaze was all too determined. Just put me with the team, and we'll go help Chiriku. Even if he knew he was in the wrong for asking, he couldn't help it. A cruel, albeit reasonable idea courtesy of Danzo's recent demands sparked in her head. Then I'll have Ino Yamanaka go with you. What? He walked to her desk and set his hands on it. Lady Hokage, that would put her in danger. But it would keep you from doing anything stupid. She narrowed her eyes, making him step back. That's... Giving a laugh, he looked away and thought. Not wrong, but still a horrible idea after everything. Her stare told him to answer. All right. Think you can throw Shikamaru in there for good measure? He joked. He's already on it. His brother informed. He looked from him to Tsunade. Did he convince you to fuck with me, or is this seriously happening? It's happening, Asuma. She looked down. He and his partner were the ones that spotted the group first. Well, shit. That was all that could be said. Miles away from the fire temple in the mountains was a small encampment. Silhouettes stood and sat in front of a fire. A few were missing, though. Tents were around them, hiding their inhabitants from the others. Looming over a slumbering figure, a kunai glinted in the dark from stray rays of the fire's light. I cannot be killed in such a way, sister. The same figure behind her said. Fuin glanced back to see its skull mask. You are no sister of mine, abomination. The priestess is a slave to fate and enchains you for it. Demon-loving heretic. A beautiful young woman by the fireside. They're at it again. She smiled at another in a blue cheapao. Aya, was it? Her head tilted sweetly at her dirty look. Who is Miseo anyway? Don't talk to me, slut. She spat. Oh, the irony. Her friend in a colorful kimono said, getting closer to the other woman. She fucks little boys. She whispered just loud enough for her to hear. Aya rolled her eyes. How many times do I have to tell you they were old enough? City girl, huh? The beautiful woman leaned closer to Reina. She inched away. Well, I used to be a hidden grass and I. A lick to her cheek sent her jumping towards Aya. The woman's tongue slid over her own lips. You both have a wind chakra affinity. Her smile grew at the girl taking shelter behind her supposed ally. How rare, why you? A chill ran down her spine. You can taste chakra? She giggled. It leaks through the chakra network, like the rapids of a river making water crash against the bank. But that's... I gave an irritated sigh, not bothering to remove the woman using her as a shield. Your accent, your attitude, and those ringed eyes of yours. Really, it was their similar choice in fashion and flirtatious demeanor. Disgusting. Her pretty face scrunched. Come on. The woman whined. Let's make up with a hot kiss. That's enough, Fuka. Kazuma, appearing at her side, said, rings of his pewter staff clinking. She pouted, the mole below her lips accentuating the overly cute expression. I was just being friendly, Furito. You have a strange idea of what friendliness is. Sighing, she backed off, knowing he was threatening her. Such a buzzkill. She huffed. You're normally a lot more fun, but here we are playing with corpses. How boring. He looked to the new additions of his group and twitched at the heated theological debate in the background. Be patient. His hand tightened on the shaft. We're almost done. They weren't. Chapter 70. Life is like a boat, descent. Reporting to a far superior officer while on the bottom of the totem pole typically meant someone else higher but below that official would handle it. Unfortunately, the Leaf Sambu were stretched thin enough as is, so they were deployed with a skilled tracker sensor ninja the moment he was available. Their path led to a brief stop on the outskirts of the fire temple before a complete one at the border between the land of fire and the land of rice. Lacking authority to risk making another village think their own was plotting plays with its current infighting. For turning into nearly a dozen in 2 days from what they could glean had them running as fast as possible. Even if they were present for the grave robbing, it would have succeeded anyway. The three stood before Chiriku, a stalwart bald monk. A young man with a full head of hair sat to his side and was looking down to avoid attracting his attention. Both listened to their report of the grave robber's movements. Whoever he was, the boy grit his teeth at their ineffectiveness. None blamed him. While we have superior numbers, their capabilities seem beyond ours, the experienced agent said. It seems as if they're stalling for something or perhaps even measuring our ability before they go all in. Chiriku inclined his head an inch. Indeed. His eyes narrowed. Though for what purpose if they're after corpses? Either they want someone's attention or they're dealing with infighting as a bunch of ragtag foreign independents. Shikamaru chimed in. With what we know now at Ku. The door to the temple chamber slammed open, making them shift into stances and draw weapons. A purple blur ran forward and would have been slashed by Sayuri if their superior hadn't put a hand on her shoulder. Shikamaru nearly pulled off the reverse rat sign before he realized who it was. It really she crashed into him, nearly knocking them both down. I miss you, she said with her familiar voice breaking. What are you doing here? He steadied them both over hugging her back. This is serious. I'm afraid that might be my fault. Asuma walked in overly steady, trying to hide his struggle chasing after her. He grimaced behind his mask. Aren't you a bit too close to this? No, glad to see you? He smiled. Looks like the Umbu taught you some professionalism. Turning focus to Chiriku's relaxed form, his smile grew then soured. I wish our reunion came under better circumstances. As do I, the monk said. They turned to the temple door opening again with far less caution. Kakashi led his team through them and forward. Sakura was avoiding any and all contact, especially eye contact, with Sasuke, who kept glancing at her in concern. A figure most never expected to see again nor ever saw looked annoyed beyond belief even with the mummy wrap around his face. "Are you all they sent?" Shikamaru asked with disbelief. Kakashi shot him a look. "You know how much work we do these days if you of all people are on it." "Fucking god I'm." Sayuri laughed and immediately regretted it as everyone turned to her, a stranger. "Yo." She raised a hand before pointing her thumb at her mask. "Cat reporting for duty." "Ferret." The adequately named Umbu in a ferret mask introduced himself. "Good to know you're here, Kakashi Hatake." "Just how bad is this?" Sasuke asked, turning his attention away from his teammate. "One of them feels like a tailed beast and the rest are all jonin or at the very least have the chakra capacity of a jonin, save two I'm sure are sensor specialists." "Don't tell me this is Kakuzu again." Dosa sighed as those out of the know looked at him. "Long story." Kakashi grimaced at the memory. "Neither the Hokage nor Asuma properly briefed us about the situation because of the urgency, so we'd very much like to be now, please." Chiriku turned to Asuma, who was too transfixed with the other sitting monk to register his words. "What do you know of a jutsu called Limelight?" That snapped him out of it. "I've never heard of it." His eye widened at the significance. "Oh. Back in the Third Great Shinobi War, Dad was looking into things he could use as leverage against the other villages or just destroy them with how bad things were," Asuma began. "The stone and the cloud each had two perfect Jinchuriki while we couldn't risk setting the strongest tailed beast loose trying to tame it." He looked down. "Orochimaru was still with us then, so he told him to come up with something and he did." Taking a long drag on his cigarette, he looked up, reminiscing of old times. "Lightning chakra is the transmission of power between opposing points. Everything between is shocked as a byproduct. There's nothing saying there can't be more than 2 points, specifically spread across a large area, say, around a village. Maybe even a country if there's enough. So just get 3 or maybe even 4 powerful shinobi with lightning chakra affinity and find out the right signs and application of lightning chakra to do it." Sakura's face scrunched. "But it didn't work, right?" Their village still existed and Orochimaru knew. His expression turned grave. "No. It did. Kitane, too, Sito, and Nama were picked out for their ability with lightning chakra and developed the jutsu with Orochimaru." "Then why?" Ino drifted off, realizing complications no doubt arose. "First test nearly killed them because they were too close to the focal points they created. Second test was more successful but it left their hands burned nearly to a crisp from the sheer heat all that lightning generates. The final test went perfectly, except they realized the sheer amount of chakra it would take to be effective against an entire village would drain them beyond dry." He shook his head. "But aside from that, if they actually succeeded, what do you think the other villages would do when they found out, never mind the resources it would take to rebuild what we'd annihilate, or the men needed to hold all the other lands? They'd try to develop their own, tried to kill the people who could use the jutsu, or band together to destroy the leaf if they found out," Dosa answered. Asuma breathed out smoke. "Exactly. And I know how useful it sounds on paper, but properly arranging 3 or 4 shinobi around a hostile platoon is a bit impossible with sensor ninja around to inform them a few isolated hostiles are charging something huge. Just deploy a few of your top guys to take them out." He scoffed. "You couldn't form a defensive guard around each without getting noticed ahead of time or risking friendlies getting caught in the blast." Scratching the back of his head, he bit down on his cigarette. "It was, at best, a last resort or last spit in the face to an enemy by denying them our taken turf or destroying their home with all their civilians if we thought our village was done for." Sayuri squinted at him from behind her mask. "How do you two know about it, though?" He blinked. "I was deep in the fighting and knew a lot of people, being the Hokage's son, so I was trusted as a kind of talent scout and appointed project manager to teach me some kind of responsibility, but I think the old man just wanted me to take more after him." He looked at the other jonin. "If it weren't for your psych profile at the time, you would have made the cut." Pointing a thumb at his old friend, he laughed. "As for him, we told each other everything." Sparing the boy in the corner of his sight a glance, he felt just a tinge of guilt in his chest, knowing it had to be done. "You all ending up on the 12 Guardian Shinobi can't be a coincidence," Shikamaru said. "I talked to them about it when the project was over." Around that time, there were a few attempts on the daimyo's life to instill a succession crisis, which would distract us from the war effort. They failed, but a lot of his guards died, including Guardian Shinobi. He shrugged. When the war finally ended, those spots were still vacant, so they decided to take them because why not? They already knew each other, none of them wanted students, and people rarely ever take shots at the daimyo outside of wartime. A sad smile found its way onto his face. I got into a fight with Dad one day and left the village. My reputation and their word vouched for me. Rest is history, you already know. So who is our enemy? Dosa asked. If Orochimaru helped develop the jutsu, he wouldn't need to steal corpses. His gaze steeled. That's what we're going to find out. As much as he thought he'd regret it, it could only be a few people, and he knew for sure he wasn't one of them. Either it was Orochimaru or, knowing his luck, it was someone who somehow survived that slaughter years ago. One was the more dangerous opponent, but the other was far more troublesome. Killing the same friend twice would haunt him forever. No other steam ninja bothered the four strays. Without a doubt, reports of their horrid ambush spread among the ranks and they knew to leave them alone, risking the innocents around themselves along with their lives if they didn't. Murder surged in Suigetsu's chakra every time he saw them, but it wasn't worth the energy as long as they knew their place. Karen noticed strange shifts when they were around shady parts of settlements they passed through, recognizing shame and temptation, alongside an ever-growing sense of anxiety. He stopped by one alley and was out in the same minute. In front of them was a ship, the biggest all but Suigetsu had ever seen. People that seemed from all manner of lands manned it. Sunrise City was one of the biggest ports in the world and many merchant vessels stopped by to trade and resupply. Those looking to get back home or travel also paid for passage. He walked toward a man who appeared to be the captain, notable for his fancier choice of dress, next to a few resting deckhands and a samurai in full plate armor. Where are you headed? The land of the moon, the would-be captain said, eyeing them. Well, we're going to the land of water now. He scoffed, the samurai putting his hand on his sword as duty ordered. Are we? Yeah. The samurai's sword passed straight through him. You tin cans always think you're hot shit. He pointed and scattered his brains through his helmet onto the pier. Wah! His knee was perforated gently to avoid damaging the artery. He stomped on his screaming head the moment he fell to his knees to push him against the snowy wooden boards. Let me make one thing perfectly clear. If you say a single fucking word to anything I say other than yes from now on, I will fill you with tiny holes until your dumbass bleeds out. He brought his face down to glare at him. Got it. Why yes? He choked through the pain. Good. Suigetsu looked to the staring crew members. Well? What the fuck are you waiting for? Supplies are stocked, right? He scoffed at their nervous nods. Drag this cripple to the wheel and bandage him up. They looked to the steam ninja posted at the dock, but they just ignored them. Lacking any local backing to make up for the loss of their highly trained mercenary, they went along with it. Suigetsu led them up their newly acquired ship. Of course, his tagalongs had questions. You do know we could have taken a ship going to the land of water instead of stealing this one, right? Karen asked, shaking her head at his whole display. Naruto scoffed. Don't be lame, look at this thing. He held out his arms and Yugo copied the gesture, thinking there was some special feeling to it. We're riding in style. I wanted it, so I took it. Suigetsu groaned. Can't you understand that much, woman? Karen's face scrunched. Woman? What's that supposed to mean? You are a woman, aren't you? He deadpanned. Could have fooled me. Naruto ducked a slapping chain. You look like a boy sometimes, alright? He launched himself into the air out of a few wrapping ones with wind chakra. I'm just being honest. For the love of... Drifting off, Suigetsu patted his pockets. Where did I? He landed right by the perplexed wheel-handling captain. By the way, we're going to the land of whirlpools first. No, we're fucking not. Suigetsu stomped over to them, eyes telling more than needed to be said. Naruto smiled before thinning his lips into a line. I can kill you, so leave it. He returned the look. Or is that what you're doing all this for? He stared at him for a minute, rubbed the bridge of his nose, took a deep breath, and sighed. Fine. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out what he acquired far earlier. Just light this up for me. He blinked at the shoddy-looking roll of paper. Huh. Tilting his head, he lifted a hand to its tip. I haven't seen one of these in years. A snap of his fingers sprang a spark. Mind if I try? Suigetsu rolled his eyes before taking a drag. Sure. Karen squinted at them. What or why? Her nose twitched, and so did she. You can't be serious. She gaped at Naruto, putting it to his lips. Don't do that. He breathed in, burst into a coughing fit, and wiped his mouth. But I've never. He tilted his head. Huh? Blinking, he looked around, finally settling in after a minute. We're on a snowboat. Oh, for the love of. She pointed an arm at him and looked to Suigetsu. Well, I hope you're happy. Now he's going to use drugs to cope. It's just a little grass. Aren't you from the hidden grass? He took the not quite medicinal cigarette back. And no, he's not. Taking another drag, he shook his head. This doesn't make you forget. Then why are you smoking it? Suigetsu glanced at the crippled captain. Do you even have to ask? He shook his head. Can't turn it off, but you can't see shit. She scoffed. I can see that you're an asshole. No, Naruto said. He just wants to be loved. He leaned back and fell down. Doesn't everybody want to be loved? Yugo walked over to him, but he shook his head. I'm good. Thanks and sorry. I'm so sorry. How is that even affecting you? She squinted at his unchanging chakra. You're faking it. I'm not, but I'm still the same. He smiled. I'm not, but I'm still the same. Blinking, he frowned. I'm not, but I'm still the same. Sadness and hurt crept into his voice. Come on. Suigetsu handed the burning roll out to her. No! Naruto raised a finger as if he had the correct answer. Yes. Suigetsu sighed. You just don't know how to have fun. He laughed at the denial on her face. I'm fun. No, you're not, he said matter-of-factly. Karen crossed her arms. You guys are just miserable. Bitch. He didn't react in the slightest at her chain passing through him. Out of all of us, you care the most about people you really shouldn't. People only care when I make things worse. Naruto muttered to himself. Oh, so I'm miserable because I'm not as much of an asshole as either of you. He squinted, as if she said the dumbest thing he ever heard. No, you're miserable because you're a neurotic woman riding a fucking high horse because the worst you ever had to deal with was a few guys groping your pathetic excuse for an ass and tits. Skillfully maneuvering his aquatic limbs, he preserved the cigarette for further smoking. She let me rub her. Just a girl and already so big but not pregnant. Naruto grabbed his head as Yugo began rubbing his back. Please, don't be pregnant. Anything but that, please. They deserve better than that. Having something tragic in your life doesn't mean anything you do is right. Karen, too absorbed with the one who could still stand, was at her limit. When have I ever tried to justify a single thing I've done? Suigetsu groaned, not feeling relaxed at all. I don't have some grand tragedy in my life, anything I feel like I'm missing, or something to prove. He sighed as he held out the happy smoke one more time. Now are you going to try to chill, or do you really want to keep bitching? If it will make you shut up! She snatched it out of his hands, took a drag, and burst into a coughing fit. See? Handing it back, she waved away the smoke and stood unamused for a minute before it kicked in. Whoa. Yeah, that's that good shit. He looked down. Am I The odd muttering he'd been hearing the entire time finally registered. Oh, you're freaking. Squatting down, he observed his current state. Naruto covered his face, trying to block everything out. The weight of the air is torture. I want to be reborn as something pure, but there's only bad things here. Focus on the good things, man. Don't make me. I can't. Giving a long drawn-out groan, he rocked himself. I didn't want to think, 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 I didn't want to think. Suigetsu patted his shoulder and pointed at the sky. Hey! He laughed at him, getting up to look. WH what? His head turned on a swivel. See that bright thing beneath the clouds? He squinted. The sun? A wide shark-toothy grin spread across his face. It's a star. He snickered at the utterly mystified look on his. Holy shit. While Suigetsu amused the other newcomer by pointing out mundane facts about everyday things, Karen sprawled out on the snowy deck herself. She rolled around a bit, getting a feeling for it. On her back, she raised her hands to block the snowflakes and laughed, realizing she probably looked much like a cat. That reminded her of something. I'm an orphan, you know? She looked up to their upside-down figures. But you don't see me killing people just cause. Suigetsu laughed. That's most ninja. He hummed while she pouted, though you are from a dead clan. She copied his hum. My mom said we were scattered across the lands. Groaning, she shook her head. I thought everyone with red hair was an Uzumaki, like an idiot, when the only other I ever met is blonde. Did mine have red hair? Naruto asked in a whisper filled with yearning. Stupid Red. Why don't you ever talk about her? He clutched his heart. Please don't. Please don't. Because she's dead and I didn't know my dad, Karen answered, not knowing who he was talking to and spiting him. It opened in his chakra if not literally. I just wanted you to love me. The words, desperate and earnest, came deep from the depths of his soul, drawing her to cry audibly. Fuck. Soijetsu shook his head. Don't get high with people who don't know how to get high. He tried to go for another drag to see the roll between Yugo's pouting lips, having felt left out and upset it was having no effect on him. We're going home, Karen bawled. We're going to see our family. The tears ran down the sides of her face. It's okay, Naruto, Soijetsu sighed. It's not, actually. The land of eddies is cursed. He looked to the nearby terrified deckhands. People who leave shore there just disappear, right? Their nods had him nodding to a beat in his head. Yeah. But why though? Naruto asked, distracted from his woes again. We gonna find out. He collapsed into a pudlijetsu. Onto the deck. And it's probably going to suck. He gave another groan as Yugo joined them. That's just life. You're just high, man. No. I'm just hurt. Laying there, they bickered and observed their surroundings for a few hours, to the terror of the commandeered crew. Whatever joy or terror they felt was gone by the time it got dark. Their positions remained comfortable, having been in them for some time despite the snow melting from their body heat. A few thoughts remained. Soijetsu, Naruto said, you did all this because you could, right? He turned to see his nodding head. Life is unfair and shit just happens, so who cares? Pretty much. Soijetsu yawned. You get it. Yeah. Who fucking cares what anyone does? He frowned. Torture, neglect, and vilify children. Rape, steal, and drug women. Enslave, kill, and mutilate men. Gritting his teeth, he could barely restrain his growl. It makes me sick. Huh. There's no punishment. Retribution, sure, but no one actually cares unless they can get it, which is almost always through a shinobi. Raising his upper body, he glared at the few present deckhands with red eyes, scaring them even more. Look at these worthless pieces of shit. They're no different than the villagers back in Mori and those steam ninja. Karen's face scrunched in confusion and at the audacity in the way he sounded. They're all weaker than us. So what? They think what we did was wrong, right? None of them want to do what we're telling them to. What the hell are you getting at? They have no spirit, conviction, or faith. They have no virtue. Are you still high? Soijetsu asked, nodding along. Or am I? Because you make perfect sense. How? Karen gaped at him. Naruto grimaced. They're people, and they let themselves be slaves. They're ninja but beg for mercy from the enemy. When I first heard the word I really didn't get it, but now I do after ruling over these fucking idiots. He shook his head. If they don't believe anything or follow anything, they may as well be cattle, which is exactly what they are. You just said you hate the idea of nothing being wrong. I did and I do. He looked back at the civilians, as if seeing through them. Those without virtue can have anything done to them as far as I care. She really couldn't believe the absolute certainty in his chakra. Then why don't you hate Soijetsu for not standing up to you just then? Because he already did, and he's just going along so he can finish what he started all this for. He turned to him, expecting confirmation. Soijetsu laughed in surprise. Yeah. Standing up, he frowned and looked out at the water. Did you know the entire time? When I saw the boat, I did. Karen looked from one to the other before settling back on what was always the main problem. Does Rika lack virtue then, Naruto? Just like a woman to go straight for the balls. Soijetsu shook his head. She has it. He wasn't angry or surprised he mentioned her at all. I can't believe it, but she called me a good person. Smiling at the memory, he felt the pain of who she reminded him of. Guess no matter what shitty things I do off whims, I can't get rid of that. Then what do you want? Karen finally asked. Why are you with Orochimaru? I'm going to make everyone who ever crossed me pay. His eyes reddened and his whiskers deepened. I'm going to kill everyone who comes after me until they stop. Before Kurama's chakra could bubble around him, he relaxed. Then, I'll decide what to do from there. Suigetsu sighed. You're hopeless. I know. He looked at them both and smiled. Thanks for calling me out. A grin that hadn't been on his face for the longest time spread open. I forgot what it felt like to be normal. They exchanged confused looks before realization struck. He'd been a walking god among men for a good few months and a living demon for most of his entire life. Most lacked the will and foresight to confront him about anything, like they did until recently. Kabuto was the only one to outright put his foot down, and he was the one person he seemed to actually listen to aside from Yugo. All, realizing it had been some time since they saw him, looked around and found him sitting off in the corner with his cheeks puffed. He looked angry and frustrated in the most childish way possible. From the way their three-way conversation was going, it could be from anything. Asking felt like a bad idea, though. Naruto wasn't afraid. What's wrong? Everyone got to be funny and say weird things but me. He looked away, very much upset he had all the rest of it, and still wasn't affected. But you do that all the time. Yugo blinked. Huh? I do, don't I? He relaxed. I am never getting high again, Suigetsu said, grimacing at the thought. Good. Naruto nodded. Because I'll kill you if you do. Stretching, he yawned. That shit's poison. Karen tilted her head. It wasn't as bad as I thought it'd be. Suigetsu clucked his tongue. And here you were yelling at me about it. He laughed at her blush. You were being a bad influence on Naruto. He's a bad influence on himself. Man, if only you knew, the young man in question muttered. She gave them both looks before focusing on him. Wait a minute, you think I have no virtue? He did agree with Suigetsu about the comparison to the steam ninja. Honestly? He gave her one of his own. Why are you even here? You don't like what we do but stand by and do nothing about it anyway. That's... She drifted off, realizing his point, and twitched at Suigetsu, bursting into further laughter. Naruto frowned. If we weren't related and you weren't useful, I would have never bothered with you. He widened his eyes slightly at the visible pain on her face at those words. I don't know where else to go, Karen admitted. I've been gone from my village for years now. I was a genin for a week. I have manifested several Kekii Genkai, and I'm too powerful to just walk into any asking for a place. She held herself. My mother told me never to tell any or they'd. That's fine. He smiled. We're family, right? Family is supposed to pick family over everyone else. The pain, want, and earnestness deep in his being when he said that was only visible to her. Suigetsu rolled his eyes when she embraced him. He gave a small laugh when Yugo joined in. It was all so ridiculous, but that was the world they lived in. Killing countless in the pursuit of profit was justifiable in interest of the villages, yet monstrous if done for oneself regardless of reason. Their journey continued. With what little information they had, there weren't many moves they could make. Splitting up was a bad idea against greater numbers, but they had 3 graves left to defend. The monks, however inferior in ability, were backing them up, although the best they could do was harry the enemy and act as meat shields. A price too big to pay meant they had to, though, not that they didn't mind. It was their home under attack and their responsibility. Shikamaru, Ino, Sayuri, and Ferret were posted at the grave most distant from where the group was last detected, Asuma not wanting to lead the remnants of his team in such a personal mission. Asuma and Chiriku had the grave closest to the temple and therefore closest to the rest if they needed reinforcements. Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura covered the last grave closest to the enemy. Dosu was on the walls of the temple itself, far more useful as living non-interceptable comms and a long-range sneak attacker if necessary. He would have preemptively ruptured the eardrums of every hostile, but they deduced from the recorded movements by Ino and Ferret their sensors were superior, and he would die first to bizarrely advanced Earth-style jutsu the monks observed them using from an impossible range. They're coming, Ino and Ferret said in unison, sparking the monks to draw weapons and drop into stances. In the darkness of the woods, 2 identical men in different clothes with swords walked out. Neither looked happy, but one was more passive. The sterner of the 2 took point, stepping over pit traps and deliberately triggering the projectiles. Sparks flew from a shining unidentifiable blur, smacking every shuriken and kunai away. All along, he never broke his stride and his hand remained on the hilt of his blade. Sayuri gaped alongside Ino behind her mask. Holy shit! Yeah? Shikamaru squatted down and made the signature hand sign of his clan. His shadow, already merged into the blackness of night, immediately took form. Spikes erupted from the nothingness to skewer his enemies. Then they stopped. As if something held them back at the last second, the sharp tips rested just before they could pierce their vitals. "Brother mine!" a voice said from all around them. "Brother mine? What the?" He stared as a skull-masked woman in 2 dimensions emerged before him. Another one of Orochimaru's experiments? Gritting his teeth, he struggled to muster control over the shadows. "The snake." She tilted her head. "Ah, you seek the boy marked by the hateful one," she hummed, droning in their ears. "I see him sailing into the void between worlds." Getting closer, everything was clearer yet uncertain. "The broken shards of creation reflect eternity." She froze. "Who is that behind him?" Her form moved close enough to kiss, eye holes lined perfectly with his. I understand. He must ascend to become exalted." Nothing dwelled behind her mask. Both sensors couldn't detect her chakra until the second his shadows stopped. Even if they could, it wouldn't have mattered. She was too captivated by inside his chakra unintentionally streaming into her, transmitting his thoughts to give her endless being focus, gave to kill them. They were already outclassed.